Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
Are you enjoying this thumbnail? I know you are. You have to be. It's a sign of a high testosterone woman, right? And hey, gotta break gender norms today, right? Today I'm going to explain to you why everyone you know is a feminist. Literally everyone you know. And I'm not even kidding. Everyone you know is a feminist. Is this chick a feminist, do you think? I thought this was a pretty good thumbnail. I should let you enjoy it a little bit longer. Oh, no. You're going to get to look at her a little bit longer. No. Okay. Sorry. I won't make you endure any longer. I knew that would stimulate you. That's my whole... There we go. All right. Back in the house, back in the saddle. Oh, after a week in Las Vegas. Oh, of all places. Oh, you didn't like that one? Come on. I was watching the chat before I came in, and everybody was just like, oh, get it off. What is it about, like, armpit hair that, like, throws people off, that throws guys off? Is it because it's too masculine? I don't know. Like, what about, like, leg hair? I mean, you know what's funny is, like, technically, if everybody, like, just let their hair grow, we would look like kind of like monkeys or like apes or something not what we're used to seeing. Yeah. Let's see. Religion, Audible book. You can ask Sambata about that. He's working on it right now. He's the best one to give you a timeline as to when he's going to be finished with it. I know that it is in the works. I wanted to get that out of the way here right at the beginning because I'm getting a lot of emails saying, when? It's on the way. It's coming. I know it is. Right, Sam? Of course, right. I have a new mod in the house as well. Samishi Kihaku is my new mod as well. He's a mod also over at Fresh and Fit, who also I want to congratulate on their 100,000 subs. As of last night's very spicy show. So there you have it. Today, I'm going to be getting into sort of I don't call it the lies of feminism because I don't want to steal I didn't want to steal the title of the video that I'm going to be sort of breaking down. Sorry, I hate to do this to you. I'm going to be picking apart another Candace Owens video, but it's not so much her that I'm picking apart. It's the people that she was interviewing in these. She had a collection of show, I don't know, clips or whatever that she's kind of compiled together and made sort of a best of the worst of feminism. And there's a lot of people that she was talking to, and there's a lot of topics and a lot of things that I wanted to sort of dig into because I get this question a lot about like, well, what could we do about feminism? This feminism, that. What don't you think the first wave of feminism was okay? It was good feminism. No, it wasn't. And I'm going to explain to you why today, why there's no such thing as waves of feminism today. Also, the feminism that you know today is pretty much a bastardization of the feminism that was started way back in 1848. So we're going to get into that. We're going to jump into that a little bit today, but it's easier for me and far more entertaining, by the way, to pick apart the modern interpretations of feminism and sort of rewind the tape to show you just how misguided we are about the idea of feminism, which is really the guiding light, let's just say, of gynocentrism, which is where we're at right now. Gynocentrism is sort of a late 20th century social construct or social order. You'll always hear me refer to gynocentrism as a social order. I used to call it the feminine primary social order. So if you've read my first book and I mentioned the feminine primary social order, that's really what I mean. Gynocentrism is easier to kind of rolls off the tongue, right? I didn't create that term, by the way. I believe that's a MRA term. And really what it is it's just sort of this centralization of this focus on nothing but the feminists. A lot of people will say that, oh, thank you, Red Pill Mark, for that $100. Thank you very much. Oh, wait. You got to get, sorry. You know, I aim to please here, so there you go. How many of those do we need today? Red Pill Mike says, missed class last 2 Sundays, but I'm still paying tuition. Thank you very much for that, Mike. All hail the Godfather, horns up. There you go. I guess I'm the white Godfather now because a lot of people are calling Kevin Samuels the black Godfather. I would very much, by the way, let me read the rest of this. Brothers everywhere, raise your hands into the air. We warriors of the world. You either love Man of War or you hate them. The loincloths were really cheesy. Yes, they were. But Man of War is a badass band. I love Man of War, particularly the Gods Made Heavy Metal. That's if you're a connoisseur of Man of War, that's the song you need, or if you're not, that's the song that you need to begin with. So yes, I am quite aware of who you're talking about there. So anyways, people kept talking about like, oh, we got the, I was in the chat. I think it was like Friday night or Thursday night or something like that on Fresh and Fit, and Kevin Samuels was in there at the same time. People were going, we got the black Godfather, and we got the white Godfather. I didn't know that there was, but okay. People want me to do a double team or something like that with Kevin Samuels. I would very much like to do that. I'm open to that. I think I mentioned that last March when I was out there in Miami in March. So, today's show, not necessarily brought to you by Devil Mountain Coffee, and they were nice enough to send me this nice little T-shirt today. So I'm representing. They're not actually a sponsor, but they do make good coffee, and they give me coffee now and then. So working on that. Anyways, getting back to today's topic, I noticed this video from Candace Owens. Actually, you know, it's Rugby and a few of the other my old timers throw links at me from time to time. I don't know if this was one of them, but somebody put this in my inbox, and I thought I would do a show dedicated to sort of like the mythology of feminism. Now, getting back to gynocentrism. Gynocentrism was a term created, I believe, by MRAs back in the day. So when I talk about gynocentrism or I talk about a feminine primary social order, I'm not necessarily talking about a matriarchy per se. I think that a lot of people get these terms mixed up. If I talk about fempowerment, for example, what I mean by that is this sort of pervasive social narrative that does nothing but empower women, right? It's female empowerment. And that was a very common theme and still is a very common theme today. But it's been so since really the late 70s into the early 80s. And I think it's kind of ridiculous when we talk about how oppressed and repressed and how we're never going to get equality between the genders or the sexes or whatever you want to call it. We're never going to get to that point. You know, we've come a long way, baby. Do you remember that poster? Do you remember that one? You come a long way, baby. That was a 70s, I think maybe even early 80s poster that was supposed to be like sort of this, we're going to instill confidence in girls today because girls are just not confident enough, and we need to build them up and buff them out that much more. When I talk about fempowerment, that's what I'm talking about. So any kind of social contrivances, any social conventions that are in some way meant to foster or empower women. If I say fempowerment, it's just easier for me to say it that way. So I'm kind of clarifying terms here for you guys today. Gynocentrism is essentially anything that benefits women, period. Whether that's reproductively, whether that's socially, whether that's economically. As far as where we are in a society today, we are now entering into, I would say, probably about the 50th year, maybe 55th year of what I have called gynocentrism, or the female primary social order. And really, I mark that as something that was a product, and I did this in my 4th book right here. I mark this as a product of the sexual revolution. Most of what I'm going to get into today is actually, we're going to get into two sides of things. We're going to get into the pre-sexual revolution years and the post-sexual revolution years. And the post-sexual revolution years, I usually mark, just to round this off, it's probably not this year, but to round it off, I usually call the sexual revolution right around 1965, right around the time that the boomers were going to Woodstock, right? 1960, the summer of love, right? The year I was born, right? 1968. That and then into what I call sort of the militant feminism years, which were the late 60s into the early 70s, and maybe even you could make a case that the mid 70s, maybe even late 70s, were sort of the heyday for militant feminism. We are now in the third generation of militant feminism as it stands right now. And I think what's funny is when I see a younger generation, of which I believe, I'm fairly sure that someone like Candace Owens is a millennial, right? So I believe she's in her late 20s or early 30s. She might be mid 30s. I'm not really 100% sure. Somebody's going to go look it up right now and call me an idiot, but certainly younger than me. I'm fairly certain that's the case. She just had her first child, and it's interesting to hear the arguments and to hear the counters. Oh, thank you, Red Pill Mike. The counters to all of the reasons why feminism has lost its way, right? How feminism used to be good, but now it's gone bad. It's gone, the milk done spoiled, right? Feminism used to be good. It used to be something that we could, that had some sort of merit to it. And now suddenly it's gone, we got the right to vote. So once we got the right to vote, then everything went to hell. No, not necessarily. Let me grab Red Pill Mike here right quick. The gods made heavy metal and they saw that it was good. They said to play it louder than hell. We promise that. You know what? Do you want me to actually play that? I have it in a playlist somewhere. When losers say it's over. Well, it's a lie. The gods made heavy metal and it's never going to die. There you go. There's your $50. If I had that as a sound, wait, here you go. If I had that as a sound drop, I would give it to you. Tuition. There you go. Thank you very much, Nelson Carrillo. Thank you very much. Okay, now I'm caught up. If you guys are on topic, I don't mind reading your on topic things as I switch over. I really need to get a sound deck sooner or later. You know what I'll do? Red Pill Mike, your last $150, I will apply that towards getting a brand new stream deck so I can drop in some more. So anyways, getting back to it, gynocentrism, though, I have to clarify some terms here as well, because a lot of people tend to think that feminism is gynocentrism. No, gynocentrism is the product of years of we're getting there, like over 150 years. We 150, close to 150 years, if not more than that, of feminism. Now, so here's the deal. I mark gynocentrism as a product of the sexual revolution, which was really the catalyst for the sexual revolution was hormonal birth control, the pill. The pill is what sort of set off a lot of the ideas that we have about casual sex, about the ability, the capacity to actually have sex without the worry so much, at least figuratively, let's say 90%, right? And I'm rounding that off, of not having a baby, right? So now what we've done with hormonal birth control is we put the human reproductive process in the hands of women. As a result of that, you get certain social products, social results as a result of that. Now we have more women in the workforce, more women in politics, more women. I think it was, I forget the website that I saw this just recently, but women now control the majority of the world's economic systems. And so when we're looking at women who are in the Fed, and I'm not an expert, I don't pretend to be one on even online, but I do know Aaron Clary, and he is an expert. Zero Hedge, that's what it was on. It was on Zero Hedge, and there is an article on there discussing about the rates of women in controlling positions of the world's economies. And now women control a majority of the world's economy. That is a direct result of a global, worldwide feminist. It's a product of feminism, but it's also the product of a global gynocentric social order. So we're going to see some very interesting social schisms, I would say, but certainly social conventions that are going to be a result of this. And I'll get into that a little. I'll dig into that just a little bit more today, because when you put women in power, you presume that an egalitarian, socialist, communitarian way of dealing with people, with human beings, is and should be the operative state of humanity. And I'm not sure. I'm actually, I shouldn't say that. I'm fairly certain that that's a recipe for disaster. So we'll get into that a little bit today as well. I want to sort of pick apart some of the common misnomers, I guess, with respect to how we look at feminism now and how feminism was viewed prior to the sexual revolution. So there was a time where, in the quote unquote first wave of feminism, which we know as the suffragette movement, we look at that era, and we look at that time, and we look at the women's movement of that time and the personalities involved, and in particular the American version of it, because there was also a British version of that as well as other countries too. But it is more or less a product of American society that was sort of exported over to overseas, let's just say. And it was ostensibly about women's right to vote. That's what the suffragettes were supposedly all about. I'm going to show you why that's not necessarily the case here in just a moment. But I do want to dig into some of the misnomers that we're going to see here in Candace Owens' video, because she put out this video called "The Lies of Feminism." And the lies of feminism, according to dear Candace and the people that she interviews, is more about social ills. It's more about, women want the right to vote, and they still want all the luxuries and all of the things that come along with that feminism made a very, hard case for a long time. They still want the luxuries and the amenities, let's just say, that come along with that. But they don't want the social ills that come along with that. They don't want, it's that, a lot of guys will say this, and you probably have heard this even on Fresh and Fit, right? Is like women want the benefits of a new world way of, or new world order, right? A new order way of thinking about women's rights, or empowering women, empowerment. That women love to have that, but they hate the results, the negative results that come as a product of that. So it's like this want for this old order chivalry, right? We always talk, when we were talking about chivalry, it's like, well, women want that chivalrous guy to come in and open the doors. And I've mentioned this on several different essays, my most recent book here, and as well as in at least I have one dedicated episode on my channel here dedicated to the idea of chivalry. Chivalry, by the way, was really feminism 1.0. I can explain that to you as well, but it's better to just simply go look at that episode. But they want that old order, chivalry and romance, but with all of the benefits of a new order, rights and privileges. And I do mean that in the most literal sense of the privileges that come along with with just simply having a vagina. And at this stage, where we're at in 2021, I don't think enough women themselves even appreciate the fact that the cognitive dissonance is completely out the window. So when we look at like the popularity of shows where we're trying to hold women accountable, or we're trying to explain to them why you don't get your cake and eat it too, or you are getting your cake and eating it too, you just don't, you're just pissed off that it doesn't taste the right way, right? You're still getting your cake and you're eating it too, but you're angry that it's like not chocolate, right? It's vanilla instead of chocolate. So, excuse me there. So let's dig into this really quick. It's easier if I just simply show this to you. So let's get this going.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are rolling into another episode of the Candace Owens Show.
It goes back to the feminist argument, at least the modern day feminist argument of saying, well, women should be able to do all the things that a man can. And so what they try to do is they try to erase any physical, biological differences between men and women. Of course, we see that in this whole gender fluidity movement, that what does it really mean to be a man and a woman? Well, abortion really plays a part in that.
Right.
Because if a man can physically walk away from a pregnancy, then a feminist would say, well, a woman should be able to physically walk away from a pregnancy too. So rather.
All right. So this is Allie. I think it's Allie Beth Stuckey, and she is a regular on the prageru. And this, I believe, some of this, at least most of this, is pulled from the prageru site. So props to them, first of all. What she's making here is a false equivalency. So she presumes that feminists of, well, let's just say even as far back as the 70s, presumed that men can just simply walk away from a pregnancy and therefore women should be able to abort. And that is sort of a tit for tat, right? It's a quid pro quo, I guess. If men can do this, then women should be able to do that. And therefore, because we are all functional equals, there shouldn't be the same amount of like responsibility that men can simply walk away from. Well, we know damn well that this isn't true. All right. Men cannot. And I mean, right now, I know that in some countries, you can't even get a passport if you are a deadbeat father, right? You're a deadbeat dad. If you're trying to evade your child support payments or whatever, or if you are in any way put upon economically, we can see the results of child support payments, alimony. There's so much economics that go along with this that it's next to impossible to make the case and say that, well, abortion is the result of guys trying to shirk their responsibilities. Now, the capacity to end a life in utero is in no way comparable. I don't care whether you're for it or against it. Again, this is just an observation here. I don't care if you're for or against abortion, but you have to make the comparison that women wanted the right to an abortion as a result of men being able to walk away is absolute fantasy in 2021. So that's the fallacy number one. We also have fallacy number two and you will never hear this from a TradCon. You will never hear this argument from a TradCon. And if you followed me on Twitter, you'll know what I'm going to say here next, is that abortion is the ultimate expression of hypergamy. There is nothing that says he ain't the right guy like the unilateral right to end his genetic legacy in utero. And that's really where that comes from. Roe v. Wade is a product of the sexual revolution. It is a product of the of empowering women, right? Empowerment, but certainly a product of hormonal birth control. So now it's not so much my body, my own, myself, right? That's what it was. It wasn't Gloria Steinem. I don't think she was the author of that, but it's like our bodies, ourselves, right? That's where the basis of the my body, my choice comes from. And it only applies to women, by the way, because I'm seeing a lot of people talking about getting, the vaccine for COVID-19. And we're going to talk about, getting COVID passports and proof of vaccination cards and things like that. So you can travel or you can go on a plane or you can leave the country or wherever else it is. Another way of tracking guys who are supposedly deadbeat dads also. But there are certain rights and privileges that men are not entitled to or are certainly put under surveillance for if they are delinquent, let's say, on their child support payments, or they're not, or even if they try to contest those payments because they're now making more money than they did when the child was born. But when it comes to abortion, you have to look at the function of abortion. Not just the morality of it, the ethics of it. That's another show. You guys can go talk about that all you want on your religious shows. I go and I look at the mechanics and the function and the latent purposes behind that. Why is it so important? Why is abortion so important to feminists and even to women who, such as Tomi Lahren, for example, who got herself into a lot of trouble for saying that she supports a woman's right to choose, right? Another euphemism. Okay, we're ending a life. That's really what it is. And women simply don't want to be charged for murder one if and when that should ever happen, that abortion becomes outlawed. It won't, but that's just me spitballing there for the moment. Now, when it comes to abortion, what purpose does it serve? It is a fail-safe for bad reproductive choices. And ladies, don't throw this crap at me about how Well, what about instances of rape, right? What about instances of a child that is forced upon a woman? I don't want to be forced to have a child that I don't want. Okay. Why is that? Why do you feel that way? Well, I'm not prepared. Okay. You have to understand, statistically, abortions occur electively. Okay. The incidence of a forced pregnancy, let's just say, to say this nice because I'm still this side of the half hour mark, but you know what I'm talking about, are a fraction of 1% compared to all of the abortions that are performed in a year's time in the United States. It is an elective procedure. Why do women fight for it? Because it is a fail-safe against bad reproductive choices. After the sexual revolution, we handed the keys to the castle to women and said, you're in charge, queen. Go ahead and take over, do whatever you're going to do. And that's the first thing they started with in the mid-70s with Roe v. Wade. So let's not make this false equivalency here, Allie Beth Stuckey, or whatever your name is, presuming that feminism is in any way a comparison to men when it comes to unilaterally controlling the future of human reproduction.
Then rejoicing in the privilege, and to use a leftist word, the true privilege of being able to carry a child, no matter how hard the circumstance is, because I understand circumstances are really hard for women sometimes. But instead of rejoicing in that privilege and that uniqueness of femininity, that uniqueness of being a woman, they want to take it away so they can say, there's really no difference between men and women. And they think that's going to usher in this egalitarian utopia where men and women don't have any differences between them and equality will be achieved. It's not going to happen.
Do you consider yourself?
Okay, so she's about to say, do you consider yourself a feminist? Well, we'll talk about that in just a second. But I do want to hit upon one thing that she's talking about here. Egalitarianism has been something that has been a part of feminism since day one. And I'm going to prove it to you here once we get past this video here. Since day one, egalitarianism has been at least an undercurrent. It has been a primary belief of the feminist movement since 1848 at Seneca Falls, New York. Okay, what was it? The Declaration of Rights and Sentiments, right, by feminists at that time. Egalitarianism was a key element. It's not a third wave feminist thing. It is a first wave. It is from the day they said go. So let's clarify that right now. The only way that egalitarianism works, is in a gynocentric social order, or that's the belief anyways. So when we're talking about why is it that women want egalitarianism so much? I've talked about this on lots and lots of other podcasts where I've said women are innately drawn to socialism, which of course, communism and everything else. Now people say, get outraged. I can't believe Rollo would say such a thing. Now hear me out. The reason for that is because women's psychology, women's innate psyches are predisposed to communitarianism. That's how we evolved in tribes. Women were they were the gatherers, they were the berry pickers, right? They were the nurturers, they were the life. Go look in any mythology, go look in any tribal societies, even like more advanced tribalistic societies. Women had to be interdependent upon each other because they are the vulnerable sex. In that, if that is their ideal, when they are the most vulnerable sex in a very chaotic, very dangerous world where they could be killed at any moment or their tribe could be wiped out at any moment, it makes sense to have an innate proclivity for communitarianism. So if you can die in childbirth, it's great to have your sisters around you to help you with, be midwives or whatever else. The global tribe of women is based on communitarianism. It is one short step from communitarianism to socialism. That's why it seems like such a great idea in the 21st century when we start talking about democratic socialism, and it's people like Andrea Ocasio-Cortez who are waving that flag right now, amongst many, many others. So when I say women are predisposed to egalitarianism, that's the root of it right there. It is an innate proclivity. That's the best word I can come up with. It's an innate function of women's psyches to want to have a sense of security amongst the group. And so it's never really about the men folk. It's usually about the women and the children. That's how you get the cult of the child. What's in the best interest of the child is a community. It takes a village to raise a child. That's where that term or that phrase comes from. So you've got all the group of women in the camp, in the tribe, whatever it is, and it takes all of them to watch after each other's children, to make sure that they're properly clothed, they're properly fed, blah 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 blah, right? Well, the men folk are out there doing what men folk do, right? Killing the woolly mammoth and bringing home the meat to the tribe, right? More or less. And you can update that to, time-wise. It's like you're playing Age of Empires, right? You go from the caveman days all the way up to, modern times. You can see that thematically throughout history. So what happens is when women are in a state of power, in a matriarchy, and in a matrilinear, matrilocal, that's what it is. In a matrilocal society, it's almost always a default to egalitarianism. That's what she's talking about right here. Whenever I hear women even say the term egalitarian, I know where that's coming from psychologically for women. There is a belief that there is safety and security within communitarianism and egalitarianism. When women say, oh, I want to have an equal partnership with my husband, that's what they're talking about. That seems safe. That seems like the best way to solve the vulnerability problem that is innate and is a part of women's evolved mental firmware and has been so for a very long time. So when we talk about that, now, what's the best way to affect that? So I'm going to just throw this out there real quick. I've read studies where they have done these social experiments where they will give a certain amount of resources to a group of men and a certain amount of resources to a group of women. Usually it's money or something else, something that has to be allotted or apportioned to that group, okay? For women, it's usually one for you, one for you, one for you, one for. It's very egalitarian. It's very okay by your need. Kind of, well, Jenny's got a kid, so here's two for you, one for you, one for you, and it's usually a spread out and it's participation trophy mentality. You want to know where the participation trophy, everybody's a winner mentality comes from? Look no further than the idea of communitarianism and the rise of that egalitarian ideal amongst a gynocentric social order. For men, it was much different. It's all about the hierarchy. Jim, you did a better job than Joe. You get $10. Joe, you did a better job than Steve. So you get $5. Steve, you did kind of a little bit better than Don over here. So you're going to get $3. And Don, you get $1, right? That kind of thing. So it's whoever's doing the better job, whoever's performing better. It's a performance based. Men's mentality tends to be more capitalistic because men operate in dominance hierarchies or competence hierarchies. Take your pick. But usually who does the best job? That's what capitalist American society in the workforce has been for a very long time, up until we started integrating women into the workforce. And as a result, we look at our corporations, we look at even our societies, even our nationalist societies, which is basically one big tribe, if you think about it. We look at it from a more egalitarian perspective than we did as a merit-based respectability, dominance hierarchy / competence hierarchy. You did a better job, so you get X amount of dollars. That's why you get women so pissed off at this mythological 70 cents on the dollar kind of nonsense that has been disproven over and over and over again. But every election season, that's the only thing we hear. We need to find a way to make it so everything is equitable and equal. It's not, and it's not going to be, because that's not how a society based on dominance hierarchies, based on a male perspective, that's how that works. How has it always worked? You want to know why the success of certain companies are the way they are? Because they were based on that dominance hierarchy, not on an egalitarian or an egalitarian mode, but in a dominance hierarchy mode or a competency hierarchy mode. That's how the military works. You want to know why the U.S. military is struggling with all this woke crap? It's because exactly that. We're integrating this egalitarian ideal into our military, which has always been based on dominance hierarchies. The general, the lieutenant, right? On down the chain of command, right? All the way down to the lowest, private in the army kind of thing. That's the hierarchy of the military. Well, that doesn't work real well when women want things to be one for you, one for you, one for you, and one for you. Oh, you get to be the team leader today. I think I brought this up. There was a soccer team, I believe it was in Australia, and it was an all-female soccer team. And they were saying, no one's going to be the captain. We're going to have this rotating captaincy that goes around the team. And so Jenny gets to be captain this week, and Joni gets to be captain this week, and Susie gets to be captain the next week. And it's sort of this passing this thing around. And it's not about individual leadership skills. It's about the egalitarian ideal of passing that quote unquote. And when everyone's a leader, no one is a leader. It's like superpowers, right? When everyone's super, then no one will be super. And so you're looking at two different ways of thinking about structuring society even. Now, when we have egalitarianism as the ideal, things break down if people are different. That's why things like, Jungian psychology, where it's all anima, animus, you get in touch with your female side, get in touch with your male side, that kind of stuff. When we start talking about things and we start working with the blank slate, you want to know why it's so difficult to root out the blank slate and to root out social constructionism out of our society, is because it doesn't work if everybody's different. If somebody is less competent than another person, it's the trophy, or the participation trophy generation. Everybody's special. Everyone's a winner. No, they're not. And as soon as you do that, the person who is supposed to be the winner is put up against a challenge that kills him. Then that shows you that you are not in an equal, egalitarian, equity-based society where you get to be the leader, and then you get to be the leader, and then you get to be the leader. That's what she's really talking about right here when she talks about like how it is that they want to, like, this sort of woke, really woke feminine primary generation wants everyone to think everybody's just the same. All men are created equal. No, they're not. And they have different talents and they have different deficits. And some are appreciated more than others. Why is it that we pay our our star athletes millions and millions of dollars, but we don't pay our best teachers anything remotely like that? Why? Again, that's an old argument that's been around for a long time. Let's say who has the more important job? It doesn't matter, because what do we value the most? Seeing Michael Jordan slam dunk, or LeBron James or whatever do whatever he's going to do, or are we going to reward the guy who's teaching the next generation of kids to be better kids? Who has more impact on society? Well, we're not going to do that, because we're still living in a dominance-based society, but we would like to think that we are living in this ideal egalitarian society, and so therefore everybody has to be the same.
A feminist?
No, I don't.
Interesting.
I don't.
Very, very interesting.
There's a lot of people that want to, and I know you said that you're not either. There's a lot of people who want to reclaim feminism. I don't really see.
Like, let it burn.
Yeah,
right?
just
where
let
we're
it
at
die.
right now. Like, let it burn. I don't
Yeah.
really see what we're fighting for anymore. Like, I get it. Like, the movement had to be started because we actually did not have equality with men. We have equality with men. In most circumstances, we have more than equality with men. It's like plus. We have all of these privileges on top of it. And when I think of feminism today, I think of the Lena Dunham types. Like, Lena Dunham out there, she's obviously miserable, right? And she's not shaving her armpits, and she's going out there and saying that this is freedom. It actually, what they identify, what they determine.
Now you know why I used the thumbnail image that I did for this particular show. This is a common mistake that you will get from TradCons, right? They don't want to identify with feminism. She just said this here just a moment ago. A feminist to Candace Owens looks like Lena Dunham. Doesn't look like her. Doesn't look like Allie Beth Stuckey or whatever her name is sitting across from her, who says, "Oh, I don't identify as a feminist at all." That is meaningless in 2021. Absolutely meaningless. Hell, it was meaningless back in 2010. It was meaningless back in 2001. Because everyone born since, even prior to this probably, but at the very least, born since 1965 is a feminist, or has had in some way, some feminist ideology color the way that they see the world. I don't care what the hell we have all of these. She just said a second ago, we have all these privileges. In some cases, we have more. Yeah. And you're probably not going to give those up, are you, Candace? So yes, you are a feminist. I'm a feminist. Everyone watching this show is probably a feminist to some degree, or you've had feminist ideology in some way color the way that you see the world. Even if you're against it, you had to figure out how to be against that in the first place. So when it comes to things like, let's see. So I'm just gonna I'm gonna run down a list here of things that I'm sure that you probably won't hear Candace Owens or any TradCon feminist say, because they enjoy those privileges. They don't want to look like Lena Dunham. They don't want to look like the girl that I used in the thumbnail of this show. Sorry about that. But they are more than happy to enjoy the benefits of the last 150 years or so of feminism based on exactly the egalitarianism that Allie Beth Stuckey has just been railing against because she thinks that it is only unique to quote unquote third wave feminism or second wave feminism. I don't even know what wave we're even talking about, right? But militant feminism, the one that she could actually shake a stick at. That's her only impression of this. Okay. Oh, here we go, Ginger. Sure, I'll put you up there. Let me run you up the flagpole really quickly here. Was the manosphere created to bring women back down to their knees? No, it wasn't. I'll tell you what the manosphere is for, is so that men will not hate women for what they can never be to them. And it's for educational purposes. The reason why you're upset with anything that I'm saying here is because I'm stripping back the veil. I'm giving you guys the real deal here. You guys can take this and use it for whatever it is that you want. This isn't necessary. I've been on record as saying this. I'm not against women having the right to vote. I'm against men having to pay for the repercussions of the decisions and the consequences and the products of that responsibility, because voting is not so much a privilege. It's not even really a right, but it is definitely a responsibility. Women will never vote against their own interests. And when women have an innate sense of egalitarianism, communitarianism, quote, and let's say ostensibly, at least for now, socialism, there are certain consequences that come as a result of that. You know who's going to bear the brunt and the liability and the quote unquote responsibility for that? Not women, men. Because as soon as the shit hits the fan, then we're going to go, well, it's all men's fault. We get the women that we deserve. Well, the women we deserve apparently are the ones who are making decisions here that are going to not only impact themselves, but they are in fact impacting men as well. I'm not against women having rights. They can have them all they want. I don't think we can go back. I don't think we can actually repeal the 19th. In fact, I don't think we should repeal the 19th. But what we should damn well do is hold women accountable and responsible for the products of the choices that they make. That's what we should be doing. If they want that, if they want those privileges, or if they don't want those privileges, then they can give them back anytime that they'd like. But they damn well should be held accountable for the results and the consequences of that voting, of that choice, of the fallout that happens as a result of that. Irish Alpha. Sorry. Let me pull her off of there real quick. Feminism wants women higher on the hierarchy, so it is not truly egalitarian if they pose as that for moral clout. Yeah, when power is gifted instead of earned, it is abused. That's another thing. Is the concept of power amongst women is it's something that is sort of passed around. It's not. And that goes back to respectability. And I think I've talked about respect before. Maybe I should cover that a little bit. In corporate, I notice women managers bully other women. Yes, they do. Of course they do. And there's always going to be a dominance hierarchy and a dominance struggle amongst women themselves. But women are far more organized because they have an incentive and an evolutionary proclivity to be so. Yes, women hate each other. Of course they do. They get catty. They compete for resources for sure. They don't compete for responsibilities. They compete for resources. What else is here? Let's see. Zorro. Ginger isn't afraid of women going back on their knees. She's afraid of the education of men lifting them off theirs. Yes. Well, and that's the case, right? So let me explain a few things here. I'm just going to read this real quick. I'll go back to the video in just a second here. First wave feminism created proto-patriarchy theory. They were white supremacists. They were terrorists. They were against black women's rights. They were against men's rights, tried to assassinate male politicians, jailed their own husbands, wanted female dictators, opposed women's military service, of course. They shamed men and boys of ages as low as 16 into joining the war to get killed during World War I and World War II, I believe. Destroyed children's relationships with fathers through the tender years doctrine. I'll rather than go and get too deep into that stuff, I'll give you links so that you guys can go check that out. Now that's prior, that's first wave, quote unquote, first wave feminism, right? Second wave feminism, or what Allie Beth is talking about here, is second wave feminists were always against the family unit. Okay, she explains this. We hear this in no uncertain terms. Okay, if you go and you look at the literature, the militant feminist literature of the late 60s and early 70s, destroying the family was a primary goal of feminism back then. Motherhood, and they wanted to destroy it. They created gender studies, no-fault divorce, corrupt family court systems, affirmative action, Title IX, the Duluth model of feminism, predominant aggressor laws, mandatory arrest laws, rape shield laws, Violence Against Women Act, bullshit pseudoscience of the beyond the best interest of the children, which is really the source behind the cult of the child, which claimed that children could only bond with the primary caregiver. This is something from the late 70s and early 80s. They opposed sharing parenting consistently for decades. They shut down men's colleges, men's athletic programs, men's clubs, denied the existence of male rape victims and male domestic violence victims. Let's see. Anyways, I want to get too verbose there, but when you go and you look at, let me put this back up there. When you go and you look at the reasons and the rationales that women give for, especially who don't want to be identified with the likes of Lena Dunham or the likes of the girl on the thumbnail here, that's a feminist to them. Blue hair, underarmpit hair, right? Septum piercing, whatever it is. They don't want to be associated with that, and they don't want to identify with that. And I don't think anybody would ever make that mistake with these two and anybody else that comes on there. But what they don't realize is that they are the products of the feminism that they claim to hate so much, or they claim to be against, or they don't want to identify with, which is why I say that to identify or not identify as a feminist in 2021 is meaningless. It is meaningless until you can look at the source and look at the roots, like Gina was saying here for a moment. Oh, you're going to bring women to their knees? No. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the blindfold off your eyes. How's that?
Be freedom to me looks like misery, right? We don't need men. We don't want men. Actually, you do need men. Like, actually, we cannot pretend physically like biology exists. Like, this is not a good platform to have abolished men. Like, we don't want any more men. And the movement has become so radicalized. And the only way for people to actually pull it back is to just let it burn. I'm not a feminist. I don't need to be a feminist. There's nothing that they're fighting for that I agree with anymore. Yeah. It seems overprivileged. It seems bratty. You have time to put on a pussy hat and go march and scream during the weekday. You probably have achieved equality.
Right. And I just want to tell Lena Dunham, like, you not shaving your armpits is not doing anything for me. So if I'm just going to tell you, woman to woman, I feel totally fought for already. Like, you can go ahead and shave your armpits, girl. Right. It's not accomplishing that much for me.
Since still now about 20% of people meet their life partner in the workplace, what's the deal with asking somebody out for a coffee?
Right. I don't know where this dude is getting his numbers, but the vast majority of people do not in any way, certainly not 20%, meet their partner at work. They usually meet him at school or they meet them online. And I can show you the stats to prove that. Since 2010, the almost unanimously, almost uniquely, the only way people meet their quote unquote life partner or whatever, whoever they're going to end up hooking up with in the long term is almost entirely through social media, through Tinder, through Bumble, through Hinge. This is how people meet now. This is how the kids are doing it today. So I don't know where he's coming up with this, but
or a drink. And as far as I can work it out, and I quote some people I've spoken to in the book about this, but as far as I can work out, the deal is currently this. You can't do it and shouldn't do it because you could bring down your whole career unless you deploy it once with 100% accuracy that the person you're trying it on is to be your life mate.
That's about right.
That's that's a really that's a big risk for that coffee or drink request.
Yeah.
And unsustainable. Totally unsustainable.
I make the joke, and and I'm only half joking when I say if you know, being gay could be a choice, if I was a man, I'd choose to be gay, because you're always treading in really scary territory with this rise of radical feminism.
Right.
And here's the other side of it, which no one is really discussing, is that these radical feminists who make this a problem, right? Who everything it's now Me Too. You look at me, you find me attractive, I've been Me Too'd, right? You're Me Too'd. If you've said a joke that was, you know.
All right, so let me explain a few things here. Before I get to it, though, this is actually a pretty good question. Some say egalitarianism comes at men's expense. Assuming that is the case, would you consider that to be a feature or a bug? Okay, well, I think that it was a feature, and it still is kind of a feature in a case, prior to the sexual revolution, prior to allowing women a unilateral control over the human reproductive process. So back in the day, yes, it was very much a feature because it supported the nurturement and the raising of children in as safe and secure a, you know, social, like, peer clutch, let's just say, a tribe would allow at that time. Now, a lot of guys, especially the diehard traditionalists, want to think, oh, well, in Sparta, the women folk could raise the boy until he was 5 or 6, and then they would take him and throw him in a pit with a wolf and throw him a spear, and if he came out alive, then he was a man, right? Well, let's take away the 300 imagery first. There was a time where, you know, men would at least assume some aspect of raising the boys into the next generation of men. And for women, it was different, like with quinceañera, for example, right? In Latin cultures, you know, once a girl hits 15, that's her like sweet 16 or sweet 15, whatever it is, right? You have a hen party or whatever. We had rites of passage, a bar mitzvah kind of thing. Whatever it was, that was a ritual that said, okay, now you are no longer a child, you are a man now, and you'll be treated as such, whatever age that happened to be. Those things are long gone, and those are long gone by design. But there used to be a time where women, the egalitarian, the communitarian, I shouldn't say egalitarian, the communitarianism of women, which was security providing, or at least gave them the perception of security, was a benefit. It was certainly a feature. Now, maybe not so much. So when you extrapolate that into a larger societal thing, then it becomes a bug, because there's too many interests. So when you get to I forget what the theory is, like when a tribe gets to a certain population, then they hive off, and then that's when internal strife sort of like breaks those tribes into different, like they hive off from each other kind of thing. Perhaps that is a result, or that dynamic anyways, is a result of the egalitarian thing sort of going from being a feature to being a bug. So there, again, that's just a little bit beyond the scope of today's discussion, but I would say it's kind of like it's very similar to how, like, we have a nation of very obese, very overweight people, because our metabolism back in the day, back in our ancient ancestral past, it was a feature that we need to find sweet foods for an energy boost, right? We need to find, if food is scarce, we've got to be able to have a very efficient way of processing those calories, which worked very good for us in our ancestral past. But now when we have Taco Bell down the street and I can go get a burrito supreme after the show, I can get really big and fat on that, because it's plentiful, it's right there, and my metabolism works against me. It used to be a feature, now it's a bug. Maybe you could say the same thing about egalitarianism, depending on the circumstances. So it's kind of hard to say, just depends on the context that we're discussing this in. Now then, we were just talking about this guy was just saying about how dangerous it could be to ask your coworker out for a date. And this is something I think that is more or less a product of this, certainly the last part of the last decade anyways, when Me Too became sort of a death sentence. We have to remember why Me Too is a thing, because in a gynocentric social order, women need to control all variables. And when we look at the fempowerment narrative, when we talk about what I call the feminine imperative, the feminine imperative, by the way, a lot of people ask me questions about this because I use it quite a bit in my first book. Feminine imperative is whatever benefits womankind. Okay, that could be reproductively, that can be economically, that can be like whatever promotes the empowerment or the sustained power of women is what I talk about when I talk about the feminine imperative. And yes, part of that is control, is the power over the reproductive process of humankind, really. That's why you get abortion. That's why you get the child support laws that we have. That's why you get the Duluth model of feminism. That's why you get all the things I was sort of alliterating just a minute ago. Those are the results of a gynocentric social order that has been empowered beyond what, if there was any intent of it in the first place, beyond all intents. So when you look at like the Me Too thing, or you look at consent laws, when we look at we've gone from yes means yes to no means no to I need permission. I need a permission slip. We're still talking about this right now. I need a permission slip for every act that I do, and I need video and audio confirmation of everything that I'm about to do to you. Are you okay with me doing this? And you will see this even in popular TV right now, where the guy is sort of hooking up with the girl, and the writers, you can tell who's writing this because it doesn't go by any sort of, unless it has to be really lusty and really quick. It's usually, may I touch you, my lady? I would really like permission to kiss you now, that kind of stuff. And they try to make it sound like very romantic and old school. And it's really not. It's a product of this generation's idea of what consent should and shouldn't be. So we've gone from that to asking permission for every little thing. And now we're back to where we have gotten into, enthusiastic consent. So if that woman isn't the one initiating it, it's Sadie Hawkins' world. If she's not the one initiating the romantic intent on the guy, who can in no way say yes or no, because consent only defaults to women in this sense. Enthusiastic consent is the basis for, was consent given? Was she tearing your clothes off? And even if that's the case, there is no statutes of limitation that says she can't go back and say, you know what, I really felt differently now, so therefore I'm removing my consent retroactively, and therefore that was sexual assault on your part or my part or whatever part, but you're going to hold responsibility for that. And that's really what he's talking about here. Like, you've got guys who are already trying to figure this stuff out. I mean, I talk to them every day. There's probably a dozen of them in the chat right now, right? Guys who need to learn game, who need to learn how to maximize, if they don't understand. You wonder why guys are going MGTOW. And this is one instance where I will definitely 100% heartily agree with you guys. Okay. Yes. It's a dangerous game. He's just making that case right here. It's a very dangerous game. But why is it so? Why is it that way? The reason for that is because women want to control that every step of the process. So it's not enough to say, well, if I have sex with this guy and I get pregnant, then, well, I don't have to worry about it because I've got the birth control pill. And even if I did still get pregnant, even with that, or I forgot it, or I thought I wanted it and then later I didn't, I still got legal abortion, safe legal abortion that I can rely on as a fail-safe for a bad reproductive choice. Now that we've covered those bases, now I only want to have hot, young, high-value guys that we hear about all the time, from Kevin Samuels, from Fresh and Fit, from everyone from the manosphere in general right now. The new hotness is high-value guy and how women don't deserve them. But you know what? If women can legislate in society socially or legalistically or whatever, if they can legislate that only hot guys can come on to them, can talk to them, can chat them up, they will find a way to do that. And this is the beginnings of Me Too, was the beginning of that. Because if you go, you're the wrong guy, you're the guy in the cartoon, right? The guy who's the hot dude says, hey, how you doing, Sally? And Sally goes, oh, you're so sweet, like that. And then the next panel is this big fat schlubby beta dude, and he goes, hey, looking good, Susan, right? Says exactly the same thing as the hot alpha Chad does. She's like, help, HR, security, get this guy out of here. Like that, we laugh at that, and women will, kind of twitter and giggle about this whole thing. But the thing is it's funny because it's true. Because if you're not that guy, you run the risk. Or if you're not even like somewhere in between hot alpha Chad and like big schlubby fat beta guy, and you're somewhere in between and you don't know where you are, that's a big risk. And that's exactly what he's talking about right here. Is that a result of feminism? Yes, it's a product of it, but more so, it's a product of gynocentrism that tries to control for those variables. So only the guy who knows, and he just gets it, he knows how to handle women. He's a high value guy. He's 6 foot tall, 6-pack abs, 12-inch cock, and makes 6 figures. That guy, 666, that guy, that guy's the only one who should be allowed to make a move on you, or to talk to you on Tinder, or to approach you in the club. And if not, we're going to in place laws that make sure that you are who you really say you are. It's a control of that social narrative, or that control over whether or not you're going to have the best of the best. And you're entitled, and every woman is entitled to that guy who's the high value guy, to that guy who's going, looking good, Sally. And she's like, that guy, the alpha Chad dude, that's the guy who's only allowed to make that move. That's why you have this installed. That's why it's in place. And of course, it's become weaponized now. Me Too. Me Too's been around since 2007. Hashtag has been around since 2006. Nobody tells you that. But in 2017, we sure as hell knew exactly what it was. So we've had this new popularity. Why is that? Why now? Why in 2017 and not in 2006? Because the context was different. It's more usable. There's much more utility now that we're 10, 11 years past when the hashtag was even created. It was right. It was right around the time Twitter came out in 2006, 2007, somewhere around there. So why then? Well, because now we're in a position in a gynocentric social order where we can make those rules, or women can make those, womankind can make those rules and keep that in order. So I've said this. I said this a few times, I think on Fresh and Fit, but I'll repeat it here one more time. Is that when women achieve social and political power via feminism, when they achieve that, the first thing they do is they use that power to reinforce or to solve the problems of womankind, not men, not the global collective, not for the greater good of society, but only for what is a priority for the feminine imperative, for what works best for women. So when we get to a point where we can put women into the workforce, when we can put women into positions of power, whether that's within the corporate America, within political society, within positions of influence, even in the financial sector, which we're seeing, I mentioned earlier, in positions of religion, which I talk about here. When you put women into those positions of power, it, according to whatever the context of those, those theaters that they're in, they only focus on the issues and the things that would secure security for women, whether that's reproductive or economic or whatever else. And so as a result, when we look at women's mating strategy, hypergamy, alpha, seed, beta, need, the first thing they go for is the security side of that. And that's beta need, provisioning, protection, and parental investment. So even if she has the kid, she knows that she has that side of the equation matched. So through social programs, through child support laws, through abortion if she wants, all of that side of women's mating strategy is accounted for legalistically, social-wise, from the social doctrine, let's just say, and all along the steps, every step of the way. That's the easiest thing to affect, and that's really what women have been doing for a long time, really since the 70s, since we put women into position of power after the rise of gynocentrism, but after the sexual revolution. So we put women into those positions of power. The first thing they do is they try to consolidate on the beta buck side of hypergamy. That's more or less taken care of now. And even if it's not, the perception that it is or should be or will be down the line is something that the last 2 generations, maybe even 3 generations of women take for granted. They go, okay, well, now what are we going to focus on? Now we need to make sure that we're only being approached by high value guys. So that's why you hear women say, men need to take on more responsibility. Men need to man up. Here's the manhood medal, right? Here's whatever else it is. This is what you have to do to qualify for me. And to now, since the beta buck side of hypergamy is already more or less socially, legislatively taken care of, the only thing that's left is the alpha fuck side, the alpha seed side. And that's where you get control measures like Me Too, so that guys, generations of guys, are put in their lane. and they stay in their lane, and you never get out of your lane. And God forbid you ever even try to get out of your lane, because if you do, you run the risk of exactly what this guy was saying here, is you're going to go to jail. You said the wrong things to the wrong girl in the wrong way. Don't care how awkward you are. Don't care how old you are. Doesn't make any difference. If you are not what most women on planet Earth, and certainly on social media, would call an alpha male guy, a guy who's got his shit together, a high value dude, if that's not you, and you try to make that jump, you try to take that risk, the odds are that you could be, at least the option is there for a woman to say, that's sexual assault, that's sexual harassment, that's an unwanted advance. And you get enough of that, so it has a cooling effect, right? It's not so much the guy who gets run up the flagpole and the guy who goes to jail. It's the hundreds of guys who watch that dude go to jail, whatever jail happens to be. He doesn't necessarily have to go to actual jail, but maybe he gets canceled. Maybe he loses his job. Maybe his family won't talk to him anymore. Maybe he is completely humiliated and completely defrocked, right? Because he tried to do something like that. He tried to actually pretend that he was the Chad, and he's really not the Chad, but he believed in the idealism and the romanticism that women still want to say, you should do this. Yeah, come on, ask us out. It's not him who is that you need to be concerned with. It's the guys who, like the hundreds and hundreds and maybe in case thousands of guys who see this happen and they go, why would I bother with that? I'm going to go to jail just because I don't know game. I don't look like that. I'm not the hot guy in the foam cannon party, right? Why would I bother? That's how you get MGTOW. That's how you get the black pill. It's not the guy that goes to jail. It's all the guys watching that dude go to jail. And I mean that figuratively. I don't mean literally going to jail. What'd you say? To further proof Rollo's point, New York is trying to pass Assembly Bill A6540 to make it illegal to lie to someone about your job to get sex. Yeah, I did see that. There's also another one, LB John, in Australia, I believe it was, is where it originated. And they were trying to do pretty much the same thing. So that if a woman gave you sexual consent under the belief, this is great because you want to talk about how women are gold diggers or are opportunistic in their love interests, right? I always said men approach love idealistically and women approach love opportunistically. If you need any proof of that, look at this. What is it? Assembly Bill A6540. That's your legislative proof right there. Right? It's opportunism. He's actually not. He's not part of a law team, or he's not going to make partner, or he's not actually a surgeon doing his residency or whatever, and he's really a barista. He's really a sandwich artist at Subway. Well, I wouldn't have given him consent to have sex with me had I known that. But if he really were a surgeon, then I would have had no problem giving him consent. It's so in your face right now, and women, there's no cognitive dissonance. In fact, I said this before, is that when it comes to women have no trouble with cognitive dissonance whatsoever. They have no problem holding two conflicting ideas at the same time because there's no insight, there's no critical thought. And it's not because women are stupid or I'm not making any judgment call on intelligence or anything like that. It just doesn't serve consolidating or optimizing hypergamy. So when I talk to my poor girls at a promo and they're asking each other, would you ever have sex on the first date? One of them says to the other, no, well, yeah, but I have, but not a guy who I thought was boyfriend material. So she'll have sex with the hot guy in the foam cannon party immediately because he's a sexual opportunity, right? He's a target of opportunity, right? Hypergamy cannot afford to miss those opportunities. But if he comes off as the guy who is sort of like boyfriend material, then she'll make him wait. And those are two very conflicting ideals, don't you think? I mean, this guy, what I've said this before, is that, women make rules for beta males and they break rules for alpha males. That is cognitive dissonance right there. And if it supports an optimization of hypergamy, makes no difference whatsoever. So yeah. When we're talking about how Australia did the same thing, I believe, if consent was given under the pretense of him saying, well, I'm going to be a surgeon, or here's my rented Lambo, right? Or whatever it is. She believes he's something else. He's misrepresenting himself as sort of a high value guy. Excuse me. And he turns out to be a low value guy after she's had sex with him. Then she can retroactively remove consent, and he goes to jail for rape or sexual assault or whatever it is. Aziz Ansari, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Aziz Ansari. Go look at him. Under that law, he'd be in jail right now because it would be ambiguous enough for a savvy prosecutor to put him in jail very easily, or certainly fine his ass, and the woman who was going to put him in jail could settle out of court, unless it's a criminal thing. I'm not really sure how that works. However, the pretense, it's still there, right? I want my cake and I want to eat it too. So if he's actually not, maybe the chick doesn't care. I don't care if he's a sandwich artist. He's hot. He's hot. HAWT. I want to have sex with a hot guy. But if that guy has to plead his case, if he has to have game, you have to figure out something. You want to know why women hate game and PUA, and even guys hate PUA, is because it's an end run around that filter. Well, now we're going to legislate to say, well, guess what? You can't do that. You want to know why Me Too and sexual assault does not have a statute of limitations? That's why. It's all resource transfer. I'm going to tell you about resource transfer here in just a second. Anybody else that I missed? I think I might have missed you, my friend. Where did you go? There you are. Cedor says men are already imprisoned by alimony and child support, so the state already jails men in that way. Yeah, but not as directly, not as immediately as a statute that would say, really what that statute is, like the one that I forget the guy's name who put that up there. John LB said, the one that law on the books, also the one that's in Australia, that's not necessarily to punish, it's to prevent. It's to keep guys. If you want to talk about cooling things off, man, you want to talk about like guys should know to stay in their lane. Hot guys should know they're hot. Alpha guys should know they're alpha, and beta guys should know their place, stay home, jerk off to porn, and not do anything and go extinct. That's pretty much what that mandate is all about. That's what Me Too is about. That's what enthusiastic consent is about. That's why there is no statutes of limitations for sexual assault. That's exactly why we have certainly Me Too, to know that you're supposed to stay in those lanes. Don't try to get out of those lanes, because if you do, you run a risk. And it's not the guy who does it so much as the guy who watched this guy do it and go to jail. And they go, you know what? I'm going to start a website or a channel and tell all these guys just to give up. The only winning move is not to play the game, right? Well, guess what? The only guys who are going to reproduce are going to be the guys who are the hot chads, the hot guys that women want to get with, because it's illegal for a beta male to go and even approach a woman. And every day another law comes out that's going to reinforce that. So when you get Candace Owens talking about, oh, how horrible it is, I can't believe feminists want this, you know what? Don't go after them. Go after the legislation. Go after the things that you want in your own life. Go after the chicks that are doing this. Go after the guys and the legislators that are doing this. Look at, and the problem is you get a celebrity, or you get somebody who's like a personality online, or e-famous, whatever, and you have to explain this to them because they haven't even thought this through. They're in a position, they have a platform where they could make a real big impact in social change, but they won't do it because it's not in their financial best interests to do it. Now, maybe you get Kevin Samuels, maybe you get Fresh and Fit, maybe you get and there's a lot of other copycats too, by the way. But you get these guys who are holding women accountable. I'll guarantee you, at some point along the way, somebody's going to throw them under the bus. It might be one of the girls that they kind of jilted. They'll hit the wrong girl, and I don't mean hit, but I mean they will get the wrong girl, and that girl will try to bring them down. And you know what? You know what will happen as a result? There'll be a new rule or a new law or a new policy, according to YouTube or Twitter or whatever, where you can't say certain things because we want to keep it this way. We want to say that the correct way to think, the correct way to live is egalitarian, to believe in the blank slate, to make sure that women are 100% empowered. It's not about equality. It's about It's about putting women into positions of power. And if you have anything to say against that, then we're going to deplatform you. We're going to erase you. We're going to make it worse. And more people will say, well, Rollo got took down because he did this video on the lies of feminism. I'm not going to do that. Boy, I don't want to lose what I have. I would never do something like that. And so it starts to foment this idea of what's right and what is wrong. Now we move into a judgment call, right? I promise I will come back. I know I'm losing you guys here.
A sexual nod or something said that I looked good today, right? Or sexy today. You're now Me Too'd. The other side of that, though, is that what you're doing is you're turning men sort of into this tail in between the legs dogs.
They're trying to emasculate men.
But the biological underpinning of this is very interesting. Is the feminists don't want that.
Oh no!
They don't
Absolutely.
Want that.
They're making men they don't want.
They don't want, right?
Sure.
And a stunning piece, and you have to read it. Promise me you'll read it.
Sure.
Is Lena Dunham.
Recently
wrote a piece
in the New York
Times
Great fan
about
of Lena
how
Dunham.
she just she could, oh my God, she's totally nuts. You can actually see she's now coping with the fact, and she actually says in the article, has Me Too gone too far?
Right.
This guy won't make a move on me.
Right.
And I'm like, you're the author of radical, you're the author of radical feminism.
Right.
This is what you made your bed laying it. Men.
Cool.
Lena Dunham in no way is the author of radical feminism. She's a product of it for sure, but she is in no way the author of it. Those authors came long, long before Lena Dunham. And just because you don't like the way she looks, she's fat and nasty and ugly. Trust me, the reason why guys aren't coming on to Lena Dunham has nothing to do with her politics whatsoever. You can take that to the bank.
Oh, no men hit on me. No men come up to me.
Who
What do you
dare?
think? Who would dare come up to you and say anything?
Yeah.
And it's not because of the way she looks. She is disgusting, in my opinion. I think she's gross. But aside from that, even if a guy would tread that territory, he's read her pieces. You've got to be crazy to go up to her and say, would you like to go out on a date?
Yeah, no, it's like going up to a nuclear device.
That's exactly
There's
right.
a mushroom cloud every which way you go.
I was listening to the Scam of Feminism.
All right. So I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say that Lena Dunham's problem with dating has nothing to do with her politics. I mean, maybe a little, but there's something else that's going on. I think it's the natural. You want to talk about why we need to sort of abolish the idea of the blank slate. Lena Dunham is like the poster child for that. It's her bigger problem is not feminism. Let me move. Let me scroll back here. Cedar, I put you on there again. Yeah, I already got you. Let's see who else is in the house. Oh, channel 1800 Dumb. Just giving the love to Rollo. Lads, Fresh and Fit, you did. The others is viral. Even blue pill guys are cottoning on, catching on, I think is what you're talking about. God bless. Yeah. That's another thing I've said is that even if you take away all the manosphere, you take away the Rollo Tomassis and the Fresh and Fits, and you take away the Rule Zeros, you take away Turd Flingy Monkey, whoever the guy you follow, take all that away, and guys are still waking up because it's unignorable now. And if I was gone, somebody else would be doing exactly the same thing, right? They'd say, have you noticed this? Have you seen it? You might be silenced. You might be run up the flagpole at this stage. I'm glad that I got in when I did, but you erase me, you erase the manosphere, and the guys are still awake. So yeah, maybe that's if there's a silver lining, maybe that's it. J-Pot, cognitive dissonance applies to conflicting facts. Yes, women are more focused on emotions. Conflicting facts are fine as long as their emotional response is both to both as a benefit to them. Yeah, and that's funny you should say that. I've said before, never appeal to reason with women. Always appeal to emotion. It's not to say that women can't be rational. It's not to say that they can't learn to be reasonable. It's just that they start and they begin from a position of emotion, not from a position of reason, unless they are trained to do so. It's not that there aren't like women who can be mathematicians or like think logically or whatever, prefer that. It's just that that's not the natural proclivity, and it's something that women have to be taught and learn to prioritize. So, and men what I find fascinating is for at least since the 70s, we've encouraged this idea that men need to be stop being so macho, stop wearing, we did a whole episode on this, like how men wear the mask of masculinity and how it's false. And if you were a real man, you'd look more like a woman, or you'd act and behave more like a woman. And to be a correct, good human being is to experience the world as a woman does. We'll talk about that. we'll talk about how men are defective because they don't have a natural proclivity to default to the emotional first or prioritize that first. They usually go instinct, reason, and then emotion, unless they are taught, not unlike women can be occasionally, to prioritize emotion and then reason as women do, which is what we've done generationally for the last 4 or 5 generations. Get in touch with your feminine side. Express yourself emotionally. It's okay for guys to cry. Whatever the trope is, whatever the what they believe is an ideal. We'd have this ideal society if men could just be more emotionally available. No, they would die. And the reason for that is because men did not evolve that way. We evolved for instinct, reason, and then emotion because it was that reason of learning from our mistakes and learning from learning to condition ourselves to protect ourselves, and not just ourselves, but our women folk and our children as well, and to have an innate proclivity to want to have an innate masculine providership, protectorship of women. That is that's a feature and not a bug. But since the 70s, we've said that that's a bug. And that it would be so much better if men would just drop this mask of masculinity and focus more on this emotional side. And what that is it's an appeal to teach. It's an appeal to emotion for women, for men to be more like women, right? So what it is it's appealing to men who our innate proclivity is to think rationally and then figure out how we felt about it. For women, it's instinct, and then this is how I feel about it. Oh my God. And then arrive at reason, assuming it's been conditioned and been learned, and say, look, things aren't really as bad as they are because here's the rational, reasonable way of thinking. When you get on a show like Fresh and Fit, or you get like women who are just outraged at something that Kevin Samuels says, it's because he's appealing to reason and not emotion. But women are interpreting that reason and that rational, those stats and those statistics and the reality because they default to emotion before they get to reason. In fact, most of them never get to reason because the facts and the rationality and the empiricism that is brought to them in no uncertain terms, in stark contrast, goes against every emotional investment they have in how the world is supposed to work, right? You wouldn't be saying that if there wasn't something wrong with you. That's why I said, when women say, who hurt you, that's an emotional appeal. They're trying to drag you into an emotional argument. They're trying to drag you into the emotional language of women. And the mistake is for guys to go, there was this girl, Chrissy, when I was 12 years old, and she didn't want to go to the junior high school homecoming dance with me, and that hurt. That's what they're expecting you to say, because then they can drag you into that emotional state. So teaching women to be to be more rational, it can be done in the same way that we can condition generations of guys to default to emotionalism rather than their innate proclivity for rationalism or empiricism or reason, whatever. And we've done that effectively for a long time. Get in touch with your emotions. Get in touch with your feminine side. And we need mythology to sort of reinforce that. That's why you have the soulmate myth. That's why you have one-itis. That's why you get that codependency. One-itis was, I'm not saying that the soulmate idea hasn't been around for a long time. It has, but that's been to foster monogamy in a species that's really innately not monogamous, but we work better when we are. So we have to have sort of social controls and mythology and belief sets that predispose us or push us in that direction, because that's usually a better way to, we're monogamous in spite of ourselves, but to get to that monogamy, we need mythology and we need metaphorical truths and we need belief sets that sort of keep us in there and say, well, it works better if you just do it this way. Well, when we're talking about instinct, emotion, and reason, it's not that you can't learn to be more emotional as a guy. In fact, that's been the push since the 70s. Same thing applies to women. You can teach women to be more rational. Absolutely, you can. I would certainly hope I've instilled a good amount of rationality and reasonability, I guess, for lack of a better term, into my daughter. But she's always going to say, and still does, start from a position of emotion. And so when you have those two conflict, when we have emotion conflicts with the reason, when women don't fall in love because they go, let me check this spreadsheet and see why I should be in love with you. I don't do that. He's hot. It was fun. It was a good emotional experience. Women love the emotion that come from a guy that they think that they're going to lock down, who is the optimal hypergamous alpha Chad, right? Let me keep going up here. Okay, I think I caught up as much as I'm going to catch up. Let's keep going with this. Where'd you go? There you are.
Today, it would say, go out and be like men, be the most productive that you can be. You should want to work for the next 50 years and provide for your family. You can do it without a man. Adopt a child. You shouldn't want to pursue marriage. Marriage is bondage. And that's pretty much the scam of and the myth of feminism, right? But at their core, I think all of these women are running around thinking that they just want men to see them, but men don't want these radicalized women that are saying, if we have children, I'm going to let them pick their gender, right? I mean, that's like
having little babies is the new term. It's not he or she, it's babies.
Yeah.
And we now have the social scientific data. Since second wave feminism, since the 1970s, women have become less happy, not just relative to men, which is also true, but in absolute terms. And the left is shocked by this. They say, no, but now women have all of these new ideologies. Right, and it's making them miserable. Maybe something's wrong with that ideology of feminism.
I got a call. I do a male-female hour on my radio show every week, and I have for.
All right, this is Dennis Prager. I want to throw this out there really quick. There is, whenever it comes to, you'll hear this primarily from traditional conservatives. They very much cling to the idea of waves of feminism. First wave feminism was great. Second wave feminism's bad, right? What happened to feminism that made it horrible, right? You won't hear that line of reasoning from women who identify themselves as feminists. They don't make those distinctions anymore because, well, first of all, because it's a belief set overall, but they don't make those distinctions because they don't have to. Because to them, feminism has always been good. It's always been a net benefit. In fact, if you ask a woman who identifies as feminist, you ask Lena Dunham, right? You ask the girl in the thumbnail here, has feminism spoiled? Like the milk done spoiled, right? What went wrong with feminism since the last decade, or the last 2 decades, or the last 3 decades, or really since 1965? What went wrong with feminism? What's going on? I can't believe this ideology is not really all that functional and all that beneficial to society. You ask someone who would say that they're a feminist, they don't see that whatsoever. In fact, the only thing they say is this. They will always default to this. Feminism is about equality. It's only about equality. Don't you believe that men and women should be equal? Again, defaulting to the blank slate. Well, men and women are equal. There's really no difference between us. You want to know how we get to ideas of social constructionism in gender? That's how you get that. So when we say, well, there are actually 71 or 78, what it is now, different genders, and it's just a social construct, so you can be whatever you want. I saw this video of this thing, and I don't know if it's male or female. I want to say it was female, but I'm probably wrong. It was probably male, like biologically male, but it looked very female. And of course, it looked like the kid is maybe 16 or 17. And he, she, it, whatever is on TikTok talking about how it doesn't matter what you think, old person, because this is the way things are. And this is dead. It's like a religious belief in the fact that gender is a social construct. And if you don't accept that and you don't use their pronouns, then they're going to force you into it. They're going to legislate you to have compelled speech, which is exactly what Jordan Peterson, you want to know how Jordan Peterson got famous? Because he defied compelled speech. And we'll get to the point where you will be compelled at some point along the way. But all of that doesn't work if there's no such thing as the blank slate or social constructionism. Kick out the legs of the blank slate, and you kick out the legs of social constructionism, and everything else falls down. And that's including feminism. Feminism today, and really since prior to this, because anytime you're talking about egalitarianism, you're really looking at gender supremacism, but it doesn't work if everybody is different, if there are innate differences between men and women, or at least or even if they acknowledge the differences, how significant are those differences? So you don't get 71 different genders if men and women are functionally binary different from each other. Men have innate conventional masculinity. Women have innate conventional femininity. And if you are somewhere along the line of, I don't believe that, it's usually because you learned something different. You were conditioned. Your software has become corrupt from your firmware and from your hardware. And so what they don't want to do is go back and say, I haven't been living my life right. I want everyone to play the game that I'm playing right now. That applies to feminism as well. So when men say, even men say, oh, first wave feminism was good because it gave women the right to vote, and now we're all more equal. No, the only reason why you think that is because the ideology of the blank slate, social constructionism, and feminism itself has taught you that that's what you should think about what happened in the suffragette era, which is completely false. It has always been the same movement. Always been the same hate movement, always been, it's not about equality, which is what women who identify as feminists will say. And it is not the good feminism versus the bad feminism. You will hear Candace Owens say exactly the same thing. Radical feminism, militant feminism. We talk about, even God Sod will talk about militant feminism or radical feminism, the rise of radical feminism in academia. No, it's just feminism in academia. It's not radical. It's not militant. It is the same flavor, the same impetus that started way back in 1880 or 1848 in Seneca Falls, New York, the Declaration of Rights and Sentiments, which was based and founded on the Declaration of Independence in the United States. Do your homework before you start making these ideological belief set, parroting back these tropes. They don't know this. And they don't care to know this, because if you can say one's bad and one's good, that's something that's easy we can wrap our heads around. So feminism isn't all bad. That's how feminism fluidly gets in and out of social situations, which I'll talk about here in just a second. This is Dennis Prager.
About 15 to 20 years. So a woman called me. She said, I'm 50 years old. I have 3 degrees. I'm very successful entrepreneur, CEO. And I want you to know, Dennis, that I deeply regret that I followed the feminist advice at college. Because when I come home after a successful day at work to an empty home, no husband, no children, no family, it's not good. She was not self-pitying. I actually had her call. I've written 1,000 columns. They're all on the internet, 1,000. And I never did this before or after. I transcribed her call, and that was my column that week.
Wow.
All I said was, here is what a woman said to me on my radio show.
I really do believe that modern feminism encourages male absence.
Okay, now we're going to talk about modern feminism. Again, qualifying what is or what isn't legitimate feminism. So we're going to talk about this here. I'm going to get to this in just a second. I wanted to make sure that I hit these. I did get this, and I want to put this up really, really quickly. 1 second. This is from Redco. Sorry, Redco. I'll throw you up there in just a second. Let me actually share this with you real quick. Is that it? There it is. Redco put this up there. I want to make sure I drop this in. It says, hey, Rollo, I'm 21 in LTR with a 22-year-old feminist. Okay, first of all, she's older than you, and she's in her party years. That's mistake number 1. Dating for a year. She has genuine burning desire, and she submits to me. She says she's confused. Biology over ideology. Recipe for future disaster. Or can dating an alpha put cracks in her brainwashing? Yes. Yes, you can, actually. People do it all the time. I ask any of the guys, ask any of the PUAs if they've ever dated a quote unquote feminist. And they will tell you just how easy it is to sort of like bang that attitude right out of them. And I'm not saying that that's what you ought to do at 21 and she's 22. I don't know why you would want to commit to anyone at that age, first of all. So is it really worth your while to do that? I would say if you want to make her a plate, then that's fine. But she's older than you. B, she's 22, you're 21. And I would not in any way consolidate on anything long-term with someone like that. So that's my first best advice that I can give you. And then I had, and then you said again, want to add to that. I got into an LTR before getting red pilled. Okay. Well, then you got no excuse, right? I'm very new, but I have watched a lot of your stuff. I'm currently on book 2. Good. Well, if you are on book 2, then you have probably seen this lovely thing. Okay. See that orange line there where it says party years? You are here. Just put a little "you are here" tag right there. Read that book and read the second book all the way through, and you'll understand what exactly I'm talking about there. So there you have that. Let's continue. This is
encourages it because it's become toxic. They use terms like toxic masculinity, right? And I say to myself, all of their examples of the idea of what it means to be a man now is toxic. They think, oh, this is a man. Masculinity is wrong. There's something inherently wrong with being a masculine man. And to me, I always say that it was toxic masculinity that saved me. You know, I had a healthy fear of my grandfather. Nobody played around with my grandfather. We still don't play around with my grandfather, you know, and it's just, there's a certain level of respect when you're in his home. There are rules. And because I had that healthy fear, I was, I guess, more responsive to that sort of authority when I had to go out in real life. You know, I believed in structure. And yet this version of feminism today, we have women that are basically promoting men should act like women, right? And women should act like men. There's all of this confusion. You can pick your gender, you can do what you want. And ultimately what I think it's doing is feeding into this idea of a breakdown of the family.
Yeah, you know.
So that is actually a written, stated purpose of quote unquote third wave feminism, which is really 70s Gloria Steinem era feminism. Late 60s, 66, 67, somewhere around there, 68 certainly. If you read any of the literature, feminist literature of that time, that is a stated goal, is the destruction of the nuclear family, which they have effectively taken care of. Actually, it's been gone for a long time. I just think now we're just sort of like coming to terms with the fact that the nuclear family had its day. Now we have thruples, right? Now we have poly. Now we have, 42% of children in the United States are born out of wedlock. Mission accomplished, feminism. You're taking care of that part right there. So yeah, so what's left? Well, the only thing that's left is controlling for alpha seed. Beta bucks is taken care of. That side of hypergamy is done. We can that's easy to legislate because that's all about security in the best interest of not only women, but the best interest of quote unquote children, right? So whatever's good for the child is also what's good for also good for the wife or the mother or, what the female. Why is it that, was it 87% of child custody is almost by default given to women? Why? At least in the United States anyways. I don't know what the stats, maybe it isn't, certainly in Western countries, right? Why is alimony by the way, alimony's been around for a long time. Alimony used to only be paid by men. That's not to say that it can't be paid by women. Some women will actually, like, what was it? Adele. Adele had to pay money to her ex-husband. Well, why is that? Well, because they don't care about the money so much as who's making the most of it. That's how it is right now. But alimony laws, as we know them today in the 21st century, are really a vestige of the Depression era alimony laws that had gone on the books back then. So once again, women enjoying the benefits of a new world way of thinking or a new world order, right? A new gynocentric world order, but still relying on old order legislation that benefits them. You won't see those change. You won't see that legislation change. Even when we have more and more women in the workforce, when more and more women are controlling more wealth. And statistically, this is true. Women are the primary consumers in Western societies. They also control more wealth. What is it? Was it Uber Facts said this, is that, what is it? Worldwide, women control, or women make or create $18 trillion, but yet they spend $28 trillion worldwide. So the control, it's not so much who makes the money as to where it gets allocated and who gets to control it. When egalitarianism and communitarianism is the order of the day, it's pretty fair bet that it's women that are controlling where we're going to allocate those resources. So when President Biden says, I'm going to increase your taxes. Okay, well, where are we going to allocate those taxes? Well, I'll leave that up to my financial team, Janet Yellen and the Fed, and the people who are the females who are making the legislative choices and decisions as to where that should go, who's allocating it and who's making it. Those are two different things. And I'm going to explain that to you here in just a second, because this is why men resisted allowing women to vote way back in the suffragette days, because it was men who had the right to vote. It wasn't so much a right. It was a privilege, most definitely, but it was never considered a right. It was let's see, what was it called? It was an administrative function. It was not an inherent right, because men bore the brunt or bore the responsibilities. You always say, well, men need to take more responsibilities. Guess what? Back in the days of the suffragettes, that was a given. Men were going to be like, fire departments, police departments, quelling a riot, local militias, going to war, property owning businesses, paying taxes, all of these things that were responsibilities that men just said, well, I'm a man. That's what I have to do. These are the things I have to do. Well, as part of that responsibility came the authority of being able to vote and being able to say, well, this is what I want to happen. And women were not allowed those because they did not bear those same responsibilities. They did not have to worry about going to war. They still don't have to worry about going to war. They still don't have to worry about the same civic functions and administrative functions that men did back in the day. But yet they still enjoy the new order way of thinking about things. Women should have this and should have that and everything else, but they have authority, but none of the responsibility. Or the responsibility is still foisted upon men. As I said before to our good friend Gina here a moment ago, I'm not against women having the right to vote. What I'm against is men having to pay the price for them having that vote and having that authority. So when women, and even Candace Owens is guilty of this herself, and Allie Beth Stuckey, whatever her name was, she's done videos very much the same, saying we don't need less masculinity, we need more. Men need to take more responsibility, and responsibility. That's all you will hear, because they think that that's the panacea, right? That's the cure-all to all of the social ills of feminism and gynocentrism right now. It's not. Men do not have the authority anymore. Women will never vote against their own interests. It is always the sisterhood first. The sisterhood über alles. The sisterhood above all else. And I don't care what the religion is. I don't care what the politics are. We're looking at a very conservative woman here talking about, I'm not really a feminist, but yet she enjoys the benefits of a feminist gynocentric society. She's not going to give that up. You don't take that away. That's authority. That's authority she takes for granted. That's the difference between the purple hair feminist and the church lady feminist. So when we look at like somebody who's like a church leader or a moral, leader of the, society or whatever, I don't care, name the example, they are the products of the same gynocentric social order that the purple hair feminist is. They just look different. They don't want to look like Lena Dunham. Who does, right? But they're happy to enjoy the same benefits that Lena Dunham talks about all the time. They just don't realize that they themselves. The reason why Candace Owens even has a show on this channel, or prageru even takes her seriously, is as a result of the fempowerment narrative, courtesy of 150 years of feminism. She's a feminist as much as I'm a feminist, or anyone else is a feminist as well, in that we live and take for granted certain things that we don't even realize we were brought up with 50 some odd years, right, later, and you just take those things for granted. Now, women should have the right to vote. Well, okay. Why do we think that? Why is that like some default belief? Well, women they're doing whatever they want to. They can be lawyers now and surgeons. Okay, great. But what's the social repercussions of that? That woman's probably not, if you want to live like a guy, you're going to have to pay the price and the responsibility, have the responsibilities of men. No, I don't want that. No, I want everything. Feminism told me I could have it all. No, you can't. And you get upset and pissed off when Kevin Samuels or Myron Gaines tells you, no, you can't. Or ROLLO TOMASSI shows you in no uncertain terms and statistics that you can't do that. There are certain responsibilities. Oh, men should be manning up and taking care of me, and I deserve a high value guy. Okay, well, what do you deserve? A high value guy or a high value job? What do you deserve? Do you deserve, your degrees and your business and your focus on? I'm focusing on your careerism. Do you deserve your careerism, or do you deserve the high value guy? Well, men and women are the same, so they should want me no matter what. That's not how it works. But you're going to get pissed off at me when I present the cognitive dissonance that it doesn't actually work that way. Sir, Mr. Jason, welcome to the show, my friend. Okay, brother. So when is there going to be a correction? We'll get to that at the very end of all this. When are we going to have a correction? When is the pendulum going to swing back? It's not. Yeah, that's actually the last thing I'm going to talk. It's on the last thing on my notes, actually, Sir, Mr. Jason. I missed your super chat. Did I throw it out there again? Did I get it? ML. Oh, I see it now. Sorry, my bad. It got past me, ML. You said, are you saying that high value men have become the prize? Red pill is true then. Yes. Well, they always have been the prize, whether it's now or it's been prior. It's just that we want to pretend that, first of all, that women deserve them, like blanketly deserve them, or else we want to say, well, it's men's fault that they're not all high value guys and they're letting women down in a gynocentric social order where all women hubristically deserve the high value guy. You go back to the 1800s, you go back to the Victorian era, women's preference for a high value guy didn't change any different than it is right now. It's just you live in a different social order. You live in a gynocentric social order, whereas prior to this, you lived in a patriarchal social order. Hypergamy doesn't change. The ability to maneuver, the ability to affect it definitely changes. The buffers against that, the buffers against for the benefit of a larger social whole, the greater good, changes over the course of time. And right now, because we're in remember, I should have said this in the very beginning. Remember this. We are in the greatest social experiment ever in human history right now, since 1965, thereabouts, since the sexual revolution. It's, ladies, here's the key to the freaking car. You drive now. That was only 55 years ago, 60 years ago, somewhere around there. Maybe a little more. Here it is. You unilaterally control the spending of Western culture. You unilaterally control human reproduction. You unilaterally are entitled to everything that your mating strategy would dictate to, so you can optimize hypergamy, whatever it is. You're entitled to all of that. Men have never in the human history ever been entitled to have the hottest piece of ass they could get, right? For men, the 80-20 rule hasn't changed over the course of human history. Okay, maybe the percentages have changed, but pretty much the balance has been about 80-20, maybe a little more, a little less, depends on where we're talking about. How do I prove that? Well, let's go look at our good friend, Uncle Genghis Khan, who has, one in every 200 men on the planet is a direct descendant, biological DNA descendant of Genghis Khan. For every 17 women who reproduce, one man reproduces. So I feel pretty comfortable in saying that the 80-20 rule, and that's a very conservative estimate right there, has been in effect for a very long time. Hypergamy has not changed. The only thing that has changed is the context and the ability for women to exercise it. And in no point in human history have they been in a better position to exercise it than now, than the last 50 to 60 years. And all it took was a male invention called hormonal birth control. And that changed everything. It pushed everything along, anything that the articles of, what was it? The Declaration of Rights and Sentiments in 1848 and more, and way, way more. Let me keep going here. I want to get past Sheriff David here in just a second. There we go.
Feminism as a branch of liberalism, has had a very devastating impact on the Black community more than anything else, I believe. And that's not just an opinion. If you look back, and we don't have time to get into a lot of it today, but I could support it. If someone were to come up and demand, where'd you get that from? I could show them the research. And it didn't just discourage a man being around, it kicked a man out of the house.
That's right.
In other words, you're not needed here. Who became the male role model, the male figure in the home? Uncle Sam. All right. The government.
I'm pro-man. I just happen to know that many of them.
Okay. I liked what he said. I wanted to just focus in on what he said there. That is the government that took over the position of, basically emasculated men, right? Okay. I'm willing to, I'll give that to you, Sheriff. But I will say this is that, yes, but within the last 60 some odd years is systematically taken away men's authority, but yet still insisted on men's responsibility while transferring that wealth, transferring that security, which is used primarily for the 3 Ps, provisioning, parental investment, and protection of women. So when we say, well, Uncle Sam took the place of men in the social order and between intersexual relationships. Yeah, it did. But it's a gynocentric Uncle Sam. It's Uncle Sammy or Uncle Susan who took over, not Uncle Sam. Right? It is a government. It is a social order. It is a financial order by women for women that did that by taking away men's authority, by insisting on old order responsibility and new order authority, giving women the authority and giving women the power to do all this stuff. Do not be surprised when a government that is predicated on gynocentrism is doing exactly this.
Will take what they can get, right?
Yeah.
And there are women who will take what they can get in a different way. And so you have to hold the line, even if you're the last human being on earth who subscribes to this idea, who gives a flying monkey's behind about your own integrity being exclusive, not available to anyone who wants to click on your profile. You are exclusive. You are special. You are to be preserved. You're not to be given away. You're not a commodity. You're not something to be thrown in a trash can.
Right.
A magazine. You are a human being. And so I swear, I think it all comes back to teaching women to love themselves. I really think it's.
Women don't have a problem with loving themselves. In fact, if anything, they have a problem with hubris, with overweening love of themselves, with narcissistic love of themselves. And the bigger problem is that we can commodify that interest. That's how you get OnlyFans. That's how you get Tinder, right? That's how you get Instagram. Everyone is their own brand. Women, you're complaining about women's innate self-interest in their own self-promotion. Why is it that women continue and probably are still pushing this out in some countries? Why is it that the age of first marriage is 20, almost 30 for both sexes, really? It's just a little under 30 for both sexes in the United States. It's over 30 in the UK and other countries. Why? Why is that? Is it because men don't want to get married? Is it because they don't want to get into the divorce machine? You could make a case for that, for sure. But I would argue that it is women trying to hold out for as long as possible to get the best possible thing that they can get, to optimize hypergamy. They don't want to settle. To settle is failure. To settle on a guy who is not the best that they could do is seen as failure. It's not about focusing on a career. It's not about sticking it out in college. It's about, I haven't found the right guy because my standards are so astronomically high that no guy could ever possibly measure up to that. That is usually when I hear stuff like this. Oh, you need to respect yourself. You need to love yourself. Women have for the last 45 to 50 some odd years, all we have done is promote the idea of fempowerment in little girls, in Disney Pixar. Go watch Frozen, right? Go watch Brave, right? Go watch Mulan. Go watch any Disney movie that is the only purpose of that movie is to encourage this idea that girls can do anything, right? And pretty much every movie is like that right now. Look at the fiction, look at the media, look at the popular narratives, look at the mythology that we sell to the last 4 generations of little girls. They don't have any problem loving themselves. They don't have any problem with confidence. The fact that we have body fat acceptance, or we have, healthy at any size, the fact that we've got fat chicks on the cover of Sports Illustrated should tell you that for the last few generations, women have no problem with confidence. What they have a problem with is trying to find a way to maximize their very short years of sexual agency. That's what they have a problem with. And as soon as they can figure that out and legislate so that women every woman gets to, from the ages of 18 until she's 26 years old, gets to be on Instagram, and men have to go and give her 5-star reviews. If they could find some way to do that, they would find some way to do that. What'd you say here? Iris says, the TradCons are correct in saying that children in particular suffer terribly for the cause of women's rights. You are not allowed to say that. Yeah, they do. But they are also the beneficiaries of a gynocentric social order that prioritizes children's interests in the name of women's interests above all else. So, and both sides do this, by the way, not just the left, not the political left, not the political right. They both use the cult of the child. They use children as ideological human shields. So if children can figure out that we should have gun control, and you can't, then you must be against the kids, right? Well, if kids can see the fallacies and the horrors of feminism, and you can't, you must be against the children. So it's the ideology is actually behind the kids, right? We're going to put the kids in front of the ideology. And if you attack the ideology, you have to go through the kids to get to the ideology. And therefore you're against kids. You're against the future. It's infanticide. It's like ideological infanticide. If you're going to attack and it doesn't matter what the ideology is, if you put children in front of it, you're using them that's the cult of the child. I believe the children are the future, right? Okay, well, if you believe that, great. Then you should believe in my religion, my belief set, my politics, my social agenda, whatever it happens to be, right? That's how you get legalized hormone blockers. That's how you get the idea that you were born the wrong gender, because if a kid who's 4 years old can figure out for themselves, I'm a boy and I really want to be a girl because that sounds like what mommy wants me to be. So I'm going to be that, right? Well, if you're against that, if you're against that ideology, you're against the kids. Their best interest is we got to remove those kids from you. We got to take those away from you because you're against children. You want infanticide. You don't want him to be the girl that he was actually born to be, that he knows at 3 years old that's what he wants. That's the cult of the child. And that is a direct derivative from gynocentrism and the blank slate and social constructionism. Wow. One more thing we can give. We got rid of those things. We could certainly get rid of that. That's how everything comes back to those two things. And you can say emotionalism and you can say subjectivism, relativism, whatever you want. Those are the other legs of the stool, really. But kick out the legs of the blank slate and social constructionism as being I'm not saying I need to clarify here. I'm not saying that social constructionism isn't a thing. It's not the only thing. Because when you look at things from a biological perspective, you want to know why people hate Evo Bio? They hate, and both sides hate Evo Bio, hate Evo Psych, is because it challenges social constructionism. It challenges the blank slate in different ways. Like if you're a leftist and you believe you're going to hate that empiricism, or even the questions that empiricism asks, you're going to hate those things because it challenges your belief set. It challenges your quote unquote metaphorical truths, right? Yeah, I believe everybody's equal. We're all equal chance and equity, and there's no such thing as equality, period. End of story. We don't live in an equal world. Get over it. Be better. Let's see. Did I miss anybody back up here? Did I get to you off topic? Do you have a reference sheet for all of the stats that you talk about? I actually do. I've got a very large file of these here. I'd like to use them for a project I'm working on. Omen Crimson, hit me up on email. It's rtrationalmail@gmail.com. You can find all my contact information in the description. I'll be happy to hand off the stats and everything else that I have. Let's see. That's that. Oh, did I get to you? Yes, I will get to you at the end of this. Okay. I'm writing a series of essays for a book about how technology is changing the dating market and female behavior, advice, reference material. What do you want to know? Again, hit me up an email. I'll be happy. Thank you for the $20 contribution there, but hit me up an email and I will be happy to, I can point you in the right direction. How's that? So there you go. So let's keep going here. I don't even know who this chick is, to be quite honest with you. I've never heard of her, but I wanted to throw her in here because she throws out a lot of the same conservative TradCon tropes about feminism. Again, not bashing TradCons per se. I want to look at the arguments, or how do they come to this belief set, because you're going to hear, just like you'll hear the same excuses sort of regurgitated and reprocessed and parroted back by all the chicks that you'll see on like Fresh and Fit or whatever. It's predictable. You will always get to the part of the show where they'll go, who hurt you? Or you'll get to the part of the show where it's like, I believe men and women should be equal in equal partnerships. You will get to those part where I don't care if the girl is like 18 years old or the girl is 38 years old. They're using the same language, the same misnomers, the same mythology, the same narrative. I don't care about what they're saying. I care about how they came to believe what they did. And I have the same interest in what she's saying right here as I would in any other argument.
There. And having hopefully a mother to teach you that and a father to teach you that is important. I think the breakup of the family and the fatherless families impact men and women differently. And for women, they can be far more susceptible to a society that says, please give us you for free.
And the problem is exactly what you said. Girls aren't being told how wonderful it is to be a girl. And all those wonderful things that you just mentioned that they have to look forward to are not held up in society anymore. No. As
categorically, provably, empirically, statistically false. Wait. I wish I had that. I wish I had the sound drop, but I'm going to do it myself. Wrong. Categorically, empirically, provably wrong. We have built an entire Western culture on empowering women, telling girls how great they are, lifting them up, blowing their egos out of all proportions. You'll hear this. This is a constant theme certainly in the manosphere, is that, I'm always dealing with these girls who are just they think that they're 10s, right? And they're actually 6s. What was it? I think it was, and I'm actually going to lift something from Richard Cooper right now. It's like we have women who are 6s who think they're 8s demanding that they're 10s. Right? They're women who are 6s demanding guys who are 8s and 9s and thinking that they're 10s. How do we get to that point? We don't get there because, women are beat down and they don't know any better, or they're not encouraged to know that their intrinsic value. No, women know that very well. They're the ones that get naked on a moment's notice to get attention, because that's their only form of agency.
As a positive and wonderful future, being married, having children, those are some of the most fulfilling experiences in life.
Right. And actually what's taken a hold in culture and society is this toxic form of feminism, which has emerged, which I do my best to speak to women about and let them know that is a scam. You fall for that. That is a scam. If you believe that rejecting men, rejecting order, not wanting to shower, growing your armpit hair out is somehow freeing, right? If you believe that making yourself sexually.
Again, she defaults to a caricature of feminism. The feminists have looked like the girl in the thumbnail, right? Feminists look like this. That's what feminists look like to Candace Owens, right? That's why I use that, by the way. That's the parody. That's the caricature of a feminist. If you look like that, then you're a feminist. Of course, what woman wants to identify with this who isn't like 19 years old and full of herself? Or she looks like she's probably from Argentina, and you guys in Argentina know exactly what I'm talking about right now. An Argentinian feminist. That's the caricature. Oh, they don't bathe. No, they do. You bathe, she bathes, and you're both feminists. You just don't realize that you are feminists. Trust me, there is some if they believe that women should have the right to vote, they're feminist to some degree. If they don't believe that women should have access to certain things and men should not, or vice versa, or they believe in exclusivity of one sex versus another, guess what? You're a feminist. Simple as that.
available to anyone and everyone, and being promiscuous is going to somehow make you freer. You are going to be shocked when you wake up one day and realize that you have nothing that has actually fulfilled you because you've rejected it. You've rejected order and you have signed up for chaos because we have, again, a culture, a society, and a media that perpetuates the idea that somehow conservative values are bondage and liberal values are freedom, when it is in fact the opposite.
Totally agree with you. I mean,
okay, again, she's making it an issue. This is a gender issue. This is not a left versus right issue, because the people on the right and the people on the left are both feminists. And I wanted to make sure I said this before she continues, is that that is like the sinister beauty of feminism. That is how fluid feminism and gynocentrism perpetuates itself. Now, when I started out this video, I was telling you guys how feminism has been the same message, has been the same movement since 1848. And that's where I'm just going to round off and say that that's where it started. It might have started before that. But it's been the same message for that long, since at least the mid 1800s. Okay. The reason why we're still talking about these same things 150, almost 200 years later is because feminism and gynocentrism and its derivative or its product, its social arm, gynocentrism, is that feminism has fluidly moved in and out of social change within that time. So when I say there's no such thing as, first wave, second wave, third wave, whatever wave, radical, militant, whatever feminism, it's always been the same thing. It's because of that fluidity. It's because it can maneuver. So feminism that was in the feminism of the suffragette feminism of 1848 is still the same feminism as it was when women got the right to vote in August 18th, 1920. Same thing. It's just it survived the American Civil War. It survived Spanish flu. It survived World War I. It survived World War II. It survived the Vietnam. It survived Korea. It survived everything. It's just, you just didn't hear about it because it's the same thing, just divided by social unrest, by social change, by context, and it was cut loose and unleashed right after the advent of hormonal birth control. And so it survived all of this. And not because it's a left thing or it's a right thing. It's a female thing. It is a gender supremacy thing. It is a hate movement. It has been something that has been counter to a natural patriarchal order. And I'm not saying that's good or that's bad, because ideally patriarchy in its ideal form is a balanced form of social organization. Men and women have their separate roles. Men have responsibilities, and with those responsibilities comes a commensurate level of authority over the family, over the wife, over the direction of them. If you want to participate in marriage, if you want to participate in this society, then these are the things that you have to do. And not just for women, but for men as well. You've got to pay for your kids. You've got to take care of them. There's got to be alimony laws. I would be 100% agree with alimony laws if we lived in a patriarchal society that afforded men authority to enact the responsibility that we keep saying you need to have more and more responsibility. I'd be all for it. But it's not, because the reason why I'm not for it is because it's holding men to an unfair responsibility due to the authority of women making those choices for the men to be responsible for. So when we get to this idea of, there's bad feminism, there's good feminism. No, there's just feminism. And it has fluidly moved between the Republicans and the Democrats and the leftists and the communists and the fascists and the liberating armies and whatever else it is. It has moved in between like an eel in the weeds from one thing to the next. That's what I keep telling you. Is that it's team woman, it's tribe woman, it's the sisterhood uber alles. We only see it for what it is now because it doesn't need to hide anymore. It doesn't have to be an undercurrent anymore. It's the dominant social paradigm of this century, and it doesn't have to hide anymore. So to say that it's Lena Dunham and these unclean animals who dye their hair and grow their armpit hairs out, that's ridiculous, because the same feminism that they complain about is rife in their own party.
Think back to your grandmother, or I think back to my grandmothers, and I think back to, the idea that these women were less strong than women today is a joke.
There it is.
They were so strong. No, men couldn't get away with anything with either of my grandmothers. And it wasn't because they were feminists. It's because they had integrity and they knew right from wrong. And you couldn't push them around. And today you have these Me Too women who say, these young women who are you call themselves feminists. They wear the, fuchsia hats, and they say, oh, I couldn't stand up to so-and-so because he had a job that was superior to mine. And I just think, wow, my grandmothers would have never fallen for that. Why are young women today being pushed around?
Because her grandmothers were just as much feminists as the feminists that she complains about right now. It's that empowerment narrative. It's that my granny was tough. Yeah, my dad, he was a pussy and granny kept him in line. You need to get married so that you can settle down and she can, you need a woman to sort of settle your load, right? She needs to be there to be the guiding force, the matriarch who keeps everything together. That's a feminist narrative, man. It's like in a patriarchal society. What's interesting to me is she just said the exact same thing that Candace said about her grandfather. Her grandfather was a tough son of a bitch, right? And she still, they still are like, have some respect for that guy. She just said that her grandmother, her parents, whatever, her grandma was just as tough as Candace just, characterized her grandfather as. Does that sound like equality to you? Does that sound like a feminist narrative to you? Women can be just as tough as guys. Well, there it is. But we don't talk about that. We don't draw attention to those things.
There is an actress. I don't even know what she's in, so I don't know why I'm calling her an actress. I literally only know her by her boobs, okay? Because every time she's upset about something, she gets naked. This is her name is Emma Ratajkowski. I know I butchered that name, okay? Very, her body, great body, right? So the way that she gets attention is every time she gets upset, she takes her bra off on Instagram and she has her boobs. She goes marching naked. She just wears her jeans. She says, like F you guys, F men. So she like naked picture, F you Harvey Weinstein. How is this sticking it to the man? So I say this, my husband talked about this. He's like, yeah, all right, I guess Emma's mad again. Men have to look at her boobs. I guess Emma's really upset again. We're forced to look at her boobs because darn the patriarchy. Men are winning. They're getting the best deal ever. So women have now decided that promiscuity is a sign of freedom. So women are saying, we'll give it to you for free, right? We will have.
It's not a sign of freedom. Once again, from the top. Women's only realizable agency is their sexuality. That is why Emma Ratajkowski, she is a piece of ass too, defaults to public nudity. That is why you get a young lady parading around buck naked in front of Antifa protests, in front of police lines, showing off her cooter. And now you're just seeing pictures of her from behind. And there's always some dude with a shield right there. Her white knight is right by her, right? Or you see the girl who strips naked. It doesn't even have to be like F. Harvey Weinstein. You get the girl who strips naked so that she can do naked rock climbing because it's empowering. It's not just about the politics, and it's not just about the Lady Godiva, right? That it's as old as the hills. That narrative, that mythology. It's because that's the archetype. That's what works for women. Their only realizable agency in this life is their sexuality. Women know that. That's why they reflexively default to taking off their clothes. Free the nipple, right? That kind of stuff. Now, to say that feminists think that this is in some way freedom is a mistake. What she doesn't want, what TradCon feminists don't want to confront, is that they would do the same thing if it meant that if they really believed in some sort of political thing, right? If they had some sort of, you can find women who are, wearing a Trump hat with big American flag bikinis with big tits and having OnlyFans just as much as you're going to see the girl who's going to strip naked in front of a police line at a protest in Seattle or Portland, whatever. Again, politics don't matter. It is the female nature. Women know that that's their only agency. That's why they try to perpetuate it for as long as they possibly can. Again, she Candace Owens and the girls who have been part of this, even Dennis Prager, you're a product of the history of feminism up to 2021 right now. And I'm never going to go on Candace Owens and be able to say, you know what, here's why you're wrong. Or maybe you're not wrong, but you're right for the wrong reasons. And here are those reasons. They don't want to hear those reasons because those are empirical data that leads to questions that makes them question their emotional ego investments in their belief sets. That's why it's much easier to make it about a judgment call. It's much easier to talk about something like abortion from an emotional center. That's why women get raging outraged, pissed off when a man starts to talk about abortion. Because I don't have a uterus. You don't have a say. How the hell do I not have a say in the future of human reproduction? Only humans with a uterus get to have a say in that. The guy who puts the baby in there, he doesn't get to say anything about that. All he has to do is be responsible for the baby. She gets to decide whether she has the authority when it comes to pregnancy, particularly unwanted, quote unquote, unwanted pregnancies. You will never see a more stark contrast between the responsibility that men have and the zero amount of authority they have, and the 100% authority that a woman has, and the 0% responsibility that they have when it comes to the question of abortion. So when I say something like that, and I'm not even invited to the conversation, I don't even have a place at the table because I have a penis. But if I had a uterus, then I could talk about this. But even in that perspective, we have to make it a judgment call. We have to make it about morality and about ethics rather than the mechanics of it, rather than the money generated by it, rather than the social fallout created by this, rather than the single moms raising the next generation of criminals, drug addicts, suicides, whatever else you have. I don't get to say anything about that because I don't have a uterus. There's a lot more to the abortion discussion than just my body, my choice. But because I am, and by the way, this is by design to keep you out of the conversation, to keep men away from, let the little ladies take care of that, right? That's their body, themselves. You should just be responsible, young man. And if you're not, then, Utah just passed a law saying that, and by the way, you guys are some clever sons of bitches in Utah. I'm going to give you get a point on this one. A law just passed saying that if a guy, hear me out, if a guy is responsible for a pregnancy, that he is financially responsible for at least half of the money needed for like prenatal care. Now, at first you might think, well, that's horribly, well, what if he doesn't want to have the kid? Well, unless you're responsible for half of the prenatal care, or maybe all of it, I don't even know what it is, sort of like at least half of the prenatal care for that baby before the baby's born. And then, of course, that establishes you as the father, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But you have to be the biological father. And that ensures that a DNA test, if you want to refute, if you want to say this is not my kid, then you can get the DNA test that says it is or it isn't my kid. If it's not, then you don't owe that. You don't owe the money. What I wanted to know is if that's the case, if it's an actual case of cuckoldry, does that guy get the money back? And if so, is she now on the hook for birth fraud? Is there a criminal element? Is there some sort of recompense, I guess? Is there some sort of restitution that comes if the fact that like, oh, I paid for all your prenatal, you told us that I was the baby's out, that's clearly not mine because the DNA is not a match. Therefore, you not only do you owe me for that money that I paid for your prenatal care because you said I was the father, but also you're on the hook for birth fraud for trying to snatch me for 18 years of providing for this kid that I'm probably now emotionally invested in because you said I was the father. So is there like punitive damages? Is there like what goes along with that? But I think it was very clear. The reason I say it was a point, right, as a clever is because it gets to the point where if the guy says, I want to get a DNA test to make sure because I want to know that I'm paying for my kid. And that's really the premise of this. You will see that this law or whatever the whatever it is, the amendment or whatever is on the books right now, you will see that it will be fought tooth and nail because what it does is it removes an element of control from the reproductive process. very, very interesting. Maybe it's almost a roundabout to say, you know what? Well, we need DNA tests on whether the kid is yours or it's not. Because we still, on some level, say, well, if the kid is yours or it's not yours, you are the responsible for your own DNA or you're not responsible for your own DNA. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because if that's the case, then you're damn right that I got a seat at the table when we're talking about abortion. So if a woman wants to have an abortion and I don't want her to, then I'm shit out of luck, man. But I can't walk away from that responsibility. She has the authority in that position.
Have sex with whoever we want. We will take our clothes off whenever we want. Please explain to me how men are losing in this.
Oh, that's very funny you should say that, because I was at college at the cusp of feminism. And I've never said this publicly. And
You loved feminism, didn't you?
I loved what?
You loved it. Every second of them
that's
throwing
the
their
point.
bras.
No, that is the point. I remember saying to a friend, because I'm a good guy, but I'm also a guy.
I'm also a guy.
And I remember saying to a friend, I can't believe it. For 10,000 years, men have wanted women to think that they want sex like we do. And it finally happened, and here I am, 20 years old. God, you are a good God. I remember going through this routine with my friends.
He's like,
I couldn't believe it.
Okay, the girls are
Because
walking down the street naked again.
Or just, no, commitment is completely unnecessary. Oh, really? You got to be kidding.
Tell me this is not how men
No, so what has happened?
win.
So here is of course it's how men think. But here is the amazing thing. So the women bought the feminist lie, not the feminist line, the feminist lie, you're just like men. But they get depressed when they act like men sexually.
I'm like,
so now the depression, they're in far greater states of depression. They're far lonelier than men. And and that's why you have all the rules now. Oh, well, I didn't really say okay. Well, what does that mean you didn't say okay? So that what they're saying is, I am not to blame for the consensual sex we had, which has made me depressed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
He is to blame for the consensual sex I had that made me depressed.
What do you think about the over-sexualized culture? So if you were on a Tinder date and I'm like, yeah, I've slept with like 25 guys. I'm free. Yeah, I always use protection though. It's 2019, Michael. It's 2019.
Well, Candace, I have to ask, are you asking me at 20 or at 29? Are you asking me because it's very alluring to a lot of men. I mean, I'm sort of joking about how men convince women to be feminists and give them free sex. But if you're an 18 to, I don't know, if you're a guy in college, for instance, how do you say no to that? Especially in this culture, which tells you have sex young, have sex a lot. That's all you got to do. Sex, sex, sex.
But would you marry her?
Of course not.
Of course not.
Of course not. Nobody would.
What he's going to talk about here in just a second is the idea that, the reason I tag this onto the Dennis Prager thing is because it's like, well, women are depressed now because they have access to, they've got exactly what they wanted. They can have sex with whoever they want to. Well, I wish it was that simple. I wish it was just about, oh, well, women just want to have sex. Now they're free, casual sex, right? They're just throwing it out wantonly to any guy. And the thing is like, you don't change the machine when you change the rules that the machine can operate under, right? It's still the same machine. So it's not that women want to have sex more than guys. It's not that we're even that we're trying to convince them that they ought to be having sex more than guys. It's like the function is still there. See, what he's going to say here, and Dennis Prager said this just a minute ago, it's kind of like the Hugh Hefner version of feminism, which is feminism. Like Hugh Hefner has, you read my book here, Religion. I mentioned this in there, the sort of the paradox of Hugh Hefner. Hugh Hefner referred to himself as a feminist. He was like, yeah, I'm all for women's liberation. Of course he was. He was making money hand over fist as a result of that. He was the coolest guy on planet. He was Dan Bilzerian of the 1960s, man. He had the Playboy Mansion. He died a happy ass man because he could have any chick he wanted to, because the courtesy of feminism, courtesy of sexualization, courtesy of the sexual revolution. But that didn't change the function of women. Like this guy's gonna say this here. I think I might cut it off right now, but in fact, I think I will. He's going to talk about how, Dennis Prager talked about this too, but this guy as well, just how men can't believe their luck, right? I'm sure Hugh Hefner couldn't believe his luck either. Wow, this is awesome. All those sexual mores that were part of my upbringing are thrown out the window right now. And, he used to talk shit about Gloria Steinem. Like, she wanted to be her own strong, independent woman, but yet she married a very rich guy. So you can see it, he was playing the game. Like Hugh Hefner was playing the game, but the game was this, is that, well, women should want sex as much as guys do, because now we don't have to worry about it. We've got the pill. Ladies, show us your legs. Let's see the mini skirts. Oh, let's see the G-strings. Let's have old school, John Holmes era porn, right? Let's move on from there. Let's do Studio 54, right? Let's, disco, right? Key parties, swingers. That's when all that stuff, that's when you're baby boom. We're talking about boomers. Okay, boomer. That's the generation right there. So to the idea, of course, for guys thought exactly the same way that Dennis Prager did. It was like, hot damn, this is awesome. Women are taking their clothes off and they want to have sex as much as we do. And we don't have to worry about it because casual sex is a thing. And we don't have to worry about it because we got the pill now. And now we can, and they did what guys of that era, the boomer era, for sure. And certainly my era too, because I was raised in an era, by the way, I was born in 1968. I've never known a time where casual sex wasn't a thing. Even in the 80s, even when I was a high school kid, it was like, how am I going to lose my virginity? How am I going to get after it? Because everybody's having all this sex and I'm not. And go grab a Hustler magazine or go, I'll tell you right now, I will be 100% honest with you. I got into the Hollywood metal scene because I liked playing music. I was raised on MTV. I wanted to be in Kiss. I wanted to be in Iron Maiden. I wanted that lifestyle a lot, but I also was a creative guy and I liked to play guitar and play bass and played all kinds of other things as well. But I'll be honest with you. I got into that scene not because it paid really well and not because there weren't a million other guys doing the same thing. I got into it because the pussy. Dead serious. And most of the guys at that time did exactly the same thing. They wanted to party and they wanted to get laid. And that was the easiest way to do it. And it was, if you knew how to play the game, if you knew how to get into it. I knew guys who would just say they were in bands because that would get them laid, because, oh, you really are? Okay, I'll have sex with you. You're going to be in an upcoming band? Okay. You're getting laid just as casually as anybody in the, late, the Woodstock era. It's just a different context, a different time. But I've never known a society that wasn't like that. And now here we are in 2021, and yet more people are not having sex, but we're still convinced we're over-eroticized and we're under-sexualized right now. And all you got to do is go look at any video, you could go get free on-demand porn no matter where you are. It's a 10-year-old kid, like I said, has access to a sexuality that, kings and emperors and tribal chieftains and, whatever never could dream of having right at his fingertips whenever he wants to. I mean, it's virtual, yes, but it's a degree of sexual exposure that has never been, again, part of that experiment. Never in human history have we had that before. We take that for granted right now. We are over-eroticized and under-sexualized. Why do you say that, Rollo? Well, because we can look at the stats from the GSS study right now. We can see that most men between the ages of 18 and 24, 29 are not having sex. They're still virgins. Women are having sex. Guys aren't having sex. Women are having sex at a little decreased rate. But the last two generations, millennials and Z, I don't know how that's going to work out for Generation Z, but they're having sex at a much lower rate, but they're over-eroticized because of free online ubiquitous 4K streaming porn for guys. And I'm not saying that that's the only problem. Obviously, you've got things like, Me Too, and you got guys, you have this pervasive society that says, stay in your lane. You want to know why guys aren't having sex and women are? It's because we live in a social order that says, if you're a beta, you need to know that you're a beta, and you need never try to go hit on the girl who's way out of your league, because if you do, you'll go to jail. And it's not because that actually happens. They see one guy do that and 100 other guys go, well, I ain't doing it. And then they start a YouTube channel and 1 million guys say, well, I'm not doing it either. Yeah. And so exponentially, you get a generation of young men who aren't getting laid, who have no interest in getting laid. Because why would they? Because they can have easy access to porn, but also they lack the social skills to do so. They lack the incentive to do so. And there's a lot of downside just in case. You want to know why guys, everyone in this video saying, well, it's such a shame that men and women aren't getting married and it's really impacting. And of course, it's all about women. Like, oh, poor women. They're all depressed and they're all in anguish and they're all on antidepressants and they all have cats and they all have box wine and all of this other stuff. It's all about the deleterious effects of feminism on women. We don't even talk about the guys. We think it's great. Matter of fact, just a second ago, they're going, oh, feminism is great because they're taking their clothes off. No, there's a lot of deleterious effects for men, but we don't look at those. And why do we not prioritize those? Because we are the products of 150 years of feminism. That's why. All right. Now, last but not least, I want to get to this, and then I will get to I'll try to make up and catch up on these super chats here. I would be remiss if I did not explain to you why the suffragette movement is not this mythological, this was the good feminism. Okay. First of all, the women of that era were considered terrorists. They bombed churches. They tried to plot assassin. In some cases, they even threw axes at political leaders. Right there, I was looking at this one story before I came on. They were considered terrorists of the time. They were responsible for bombing police precincts. They were responsible for bombing churches. In some cases, many of the leaders of the suffragettes were outright white supremacists. They believed in women's rights, but they didn't believe in black women's rights. They were also very much racists. They wanted to see a white woman get a vote before a black man would ever get a vote. I can show you the data for that as well. It's a really great book, and I think the guy's name is something Webb, last name Webb. He's the guy that he has a book out called The Suffragette Bombers. And there's a lot, you can go find that on Amazon, The Suffragette Bombers. And the author's name is Webb. His last name is Webb. I can't remember his first name. It might be Charles Webb or something like that. I'm not really sure. So we have to look at whether or not a women getting the right to vote was actually a good thing. Okay. And in some way, what we think of is a good thing was not thought of as a good thing back then. Why would men resist giving women the vote for close to 70 years, right? If you're looking at let's just say 1850 to 1920, that's 70 years, a little over that, like 72 years. Why would they resist until then to give women the right to vote? Well, because voting was not seen as something that we see it as now. We think everybody just voting is a right. Voting was not considered a right back then. It was considered an administrative duty. It was kind of like jury duty at that time. You have to go and do those things. Men had much more responsibility. Men were the economic base at that time. Women could own businesses. Women could own property. The problem is once they got married, the coverture laws of that time were there to ensure that men were not held responsible for the bad decisions that women would make with that property, with those businesses that they would often inherit or maybe even start themselves. They could start businesses as late as the late 1800s. I know that. So the rights to do those things still existed, although you won't hear that from modern feminists today because they will think that they will have you think that it was just like the Hebrews in ancient Egypt, in bondage and chains until 1920 rolled around. Okay. Nonsense. Coverture laws were there to ensure that men were not held responsible for the bad economic and financial decisions of women. Also, voting was a privilege. Even today, technically, it should still be a privilege because I think that if you are convicted of a felony, you lose your right to vote. That is not a right. That is a privilege. You lose your voting privilege. And so back then, it was seen like like jury duty. Okay, it was seen like as something that was an administrative function of guys, and you have to remember that guys had responsibilities still. but they had the authority of the vote. So fire departments, police departments, militias, war service, there was risk involved. And as a result, the authority, your responsibility was to all of that stuff. If you wanted to, like, we didn't even have fire departments until the early 1900s. It was everybody had to pitch in, and it was usually men who were pitching in to make sure that the fire was put out, or the police department or militias or whatever. I mean, we're talking maybe further back than that, but still, the idea of what a vote meant back then is not what we think of it as today. But we cast women and suffragettes in characters that reflect the belief about what votes should be, like voting should be today. Okay. So there's a coverture laws. I talked about the coverture laws in one of my, and not, I think a couple episodes past, but I also go into great detail in the marriage section in the Rational Male Religion about how today men are incentivized not to get married. You have more legal control, more power over your own decisions as a single man than you do married. This is exactly the opposite of how it was back in the mid 1800s, according to the coverture laws of that time. It was better. You could, if you're a woman, you could own property, you could have a business, you could do all of these things as long as you didn't get married. You had more power over your own life and your own decision-making as a result of staying single. The same is true now for guys. So when Candace Owens and the rest of these TradCons say men need to man up and get to take responsibility, and why aren't they doing it? And then they want to blame why they're not doing it on Me Too. They want to blame it on some sort of bad aspect of feminism. And it's like, oh, well, guys are just afraid because they're afraid they're going to get Me Too'd or they're going to lose half of their stuff. No, well, yes, they are afraid of that, but there's no economic incentive for guys to do that. Why do that? Now, what they'll say, what the old order moralists will say, is it's because why buy the cow if you can get the milk for free? No, I don't want to participate in what is an unconscionable contract. I don't want to participate in marriage because not just because I could possibly lose half my stuff, but my kids are never my own. My decisions are never my own. Statistically speaking, the person who I make my wife will make the majority of the decisions and the spending choices in our family until I'm 90 some odd years old. I don't want to participate in that. I don't want to participate in the possibility of losing my children via divorce. I don't want to, and there's so much more that goes along with that. And as we have more technology that explains that, guys are going to back up further and further and further. And then you get to the rates of marriage that we have right now, which are at the lowest point ever. It's not necessarily because of feminism. I mean, that's a result. Those laws are certainly a result of feminism. But guys aren't getting married not because they're scared or they don't want to take responsibility or guys or they're commitment phobics, right? No, guys commit to lots of different things. Financially, family, military, business-wise. There's all kinds of things that guys will take commitment for. But you can't fault them for not wanting to participate in an institution that has been bastardized to the point where there's no incentive for them to do so. There's no authority in that. But under the old rules, when there was no voting for women, the majority of women were married. And as a result, it was men who were responsible for those women in those families, responsible for the kids. That's how alimony came, right? Well, women can just walk away, or men could just walk away from a family if they wanted to. Not back in the 1930s, because that's how you got the alimony laws that we know today. It's not just, oh, well, we have abortion. So if men can walk away from a family, of Allie Beth Stuckey, right? If men can walk away from a family, then we should be able to abort. Okay, well, if that was the case, then how come men can't walk financially away from a pregnancy? Why is it that men have to struggle so hard to get a damn DNA test to see if the kid's even there, so that they're paying for what they have been told and they believe is their kid? Well, it shouldn't matter. Well, yeah, it should matter. It doesn't in a society that says you don't have a seat at the table, you don't have a uterus, you don't get to make a decision. In that society, yeah, it doesn't matter. But it should. It used to. So back in the old days, before women had the right to vote, men were paying the taxes. There's an economic incentive that goes along with this too. So the majority of taxes, the majority of the money that was coming in was coming from men, not women. And that's why they said, you know what? Well, if we're the ones paying for this, if we're the ones who are put upon for sacrifice and responsibility, then we get some commensurate authority, and women do not get that authority. That means the vote. Okay, we got the vote. And once women got the vote, what did they do? It was all downhill from there, only voting for their own interests since 1920. And here we are 100 years later, 101 years later, still doing the same damn thing. So men were the ones who usually worked. It was women who were the ones who sort of kept the home going. That was their theater. And we hear that ad infinitum from women and feminists all the time. The laws obligated men to support their wives, not women the other way. Oh, also, I should say this as well, is that if women got into debt, remember how, and this still happens today. I thought this was funny. I was looking this up, is that, remember how I told you how, like, Tom Likas always says, you know, if you're thinking about getting married, don't do it. But if you're insisting that you want to get married, always look at that woman's debt load. So when you look at like student debt or you look at credit card debt, because that debt becomes part of your community debt at some point. So if you marry a girl, what you're essentially doing is if you're paying off her debts because I fell in love with her and now I got to pay for all the money she spent in Cancun with the hot guy in the foam cannon party, or I got to help pay her off her student debt that she took on for the useless degree that she got. I'm now, because I'm married to her, our community money, our money that comes together, the money I'm making off of my own decisions is now part of our community property. And that has to go into paying off her debts. Now I'm responsible for those debts. The same thing was true back in the days before the suffrage, or of the days of the suffragettes. Men were responsible for women's debts, but women couldn't vote. They still did not have that authority. Men would say, okay, if she incurs debt, well, if she can do damn near anything she wants. If she wants to be a gambling addict or something, she incurs some debt, right? I, as her husband, am responsible for her debt. I take that on. Maybe that's not the case now. I don't know if it is, but as a husband, you will do so because it's just socially, well, I got to pay off her debt. You know, the little lady had a problem. But you get divorced, you're now on the hook for those debts. And you still have that, but you don't have the measure of control that when men only had the right to vote, that was at least part of that authority versus the responsibility of the debt that they had or the debt that their wife or the woman incurred. Okay. There's also, let's see, men were responsible for all debts. They were also only men, by the way, right up until like recent times. Certainly before the vote, certainly before the ratification of the 19th Amendment, men were the only ones paying alimony at that time, and particularly during the 1930s when the Great Depression hit and they changed the laws back then. Women also had this thing called the inalienable right to strike, meaning that if a woman was to shoot you and kill you, the premise was that, again, it's almost like the Duluth model of feminism, is that she wouldn't be questioned as being a murderess, right? If she wanted to hit you or strike you or whatever, had to like defend herself in some way, it didn't matter what the case was. She was always absolved of that. Men were not. And again, it was the presumption that women had certain inalienable rights, but they still could not vote as a result of it. Egalitarianism, by the way, was something that was rejected back then. And still, I think today we want to believe that egalitarian, like one of the reasons why we think of egalitarianism the way we do now is because we think of it in gynocentric terms rather than the way that it used to be thought of. It used to be thought of as egalitarianism was a pipe dream, first of all, or it was something that the communists and the leftists and the Trotskyists and whatever, it was something that was seen in a much different light than it is right now. The reason why we think of egalitarianism or equal partnerships as ideal is because of gynocentrism. So anyways, suffragette, and I have to go here because everybody's going to get mad at me if I don't. But a lot of people think that the reason why feminism rose to power was because, and maybe there's something to this, is that it was wealth reallocation. The suffragists, when women got the right to vote, that is when that political block could be manipulated into voting for certain things, like say the Rockefeller. I have heard this. The Rockefellers were the ones who started feminism, although feminism was all over the place at the time. It might have served their interest and they might have manipulated that. Did they start it? Anyone's guess. But if you go back to 1848, there were no Rockefellers then. So what are you going to do? Anyways, I was going to give you guys a little bit of a history lesson here on was it Seneca Falls Convention that happened in 1848. There were 68 women and 32 men who ratified this thing or whatever. Of the three, there was only 300 attendees, and 100 people were the ones who signed this. It was basically a declaration of independence for women's rights. And first and foremost amongst all that was the right to vote. You guys can have a look at this. It's called the Declaration of Sentiments. I don't want to dig too deep in it, but the sentiments were if you want to know why I say that it was a hate movement or was a gender supremacist movement, go look at the Declaration of Sentiments. You can find it on Wikipedia. And let's see. Oh, so that's it for that. I'm going to back up here a little bit because I gotta backtrack a little bit here. Cocoa Puff, do you think Fresh and Fit are exposing how prevalent the gargantuan female entitlement is, or are they picking women who are very likely to be entitled, like OnlyFans chicks who see men as ATMs? I think that the risk, by the way, is to see it as just that, because I have seen women who are as young as 19 on that show. And I've seen them as old as 38 on that show. So I think that if they get women who are older and they put them on the same show as women who are younger, you run the risk of sort of this back and forth that goes with the girls. I think it's a mistake to throw more than 5 girls on there, and that's pushing it. When you get a dozen girls on that show, you're going to get infighting and you're going to get a lot of personalities and a lot of ego. I think that is it helping, or is it exposing how prevalent the gargantuan? Yeah, it is. But remember this, that all of this is an experiment at this point. All this is really doing, and it's popular, and I'm glad, and I wish them nothing but success. Of course, I love Myron, I love Fresh. I knew that they were going to do well, but it's still a formula, and it's the same show over and over again. I'm just hoping that they can keep it fresh, right? I'm hoping that they can come up with the hottest shows they get. When they get 6,000 live views, it's because they've got girls on there that they're putting on blast. And it's that much better if the girls walk off the set, because the guys are there for it's outrage bait at that point. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but how long does that last? There needs to be some sort of lesson that's involved. And I think, to his credit, Myron's been really kind of keeping that in line, because he's staying on point the whole time he's there. So I think that that's the good part of that. I think you run the risk of having the same conversation over and over again. And does it show the constant, the pervading belief set of women today? Absolutely it does. And it doesn't matter how old those women are. Let's see, what else do I got here? Thank you. Sam Bada has been keeping track of my supers here. Comlan says, is it possible that the feminism movement was inevitable due to the production mode? Before the industrial era, women weren't thinking that they didn't need men. They were more in cooperation mode. Yes, because generationally speaking, that you remember that the women who were thinking that up to, say, 1848 had no other choice. It was the circumstances at that time. There had to be a complementary nature between men and women. That's why, if you were to go and say, well, there's a patriarchy, you wouldn't even know. If you would have gone back to 1800 and you would have started throwing out the word patriarchy, they would think you're talking about biblical times or Father Abraham or something. It wasn't like this enigmatic, sinister, evil plot like it is today. And we're still today using those terms, ancient terms that the suffragettes used, that old order militant feminists of the 70s used. We're still using exactly that same language because we think that it works. We think that it still plays. And oops, there we go. Put my notes over there for today. Because women are the vulnerable sex, and vulnerability and victimhood will always work for women. Women have always historically been the victims, right? War brides. The conquering tribe comes in, steals the women from the other tribe, takes them back to their tribe, keeps them as war brides, reproduces with them. And the only recourse that human females had was to develop an innate sense of communitarianism. There had to become, like, nature of evolution, the nature of men has created the nature of women. So when powerful men have three things, right? They have access to lots of pussy, they have access to lots of resources, and they have access to territory, all of which require them to be strong enough to defend that for as long as they possibly can. That's humans. Primates do the same thing. Lions do the same thing, right? Most powerful lion has a bigger territory, access to more female lions, and has more resources as a result of that territory. Same thing. Thing happens is that when one alpha male goes in and destroys the other alpha male, he takes the harem of that alpha male and integrates that into his harem, so only he gets to reproduce with them, and therefore you get Genghis Khan, right? Well, that also necessitates an adaptation, and that adaptation is that women have to form what I call the sisterhood uberalis. They have to have the tribe of women so that they can all stick together. They have to nurture the next, this is the lot that we have because we're human females, and this is what we have to do. Again, was it a feature back in the day? Yes. Is it a bug now? Yes. Simple Fly, do you think, I think you could do some shows on egalitarianism as it relates to capacity of genders. Men prefer a value of honor and women prefer safety. Okay. Duly noted. I will do an episode on egalitarian. I will tell you what, I will do an episode on why I think that women are innately socialist and communist and men are innately capitalist, and the difficulties that we're having today, or the conflicts that we're having today, come as a result, not so much as capitalism versus communism or capitalism versus socialism or whatever. The idea that socialism is a good idea is a direct result of gynocentrism, because that seems like the best way to run a society is in this collective. Now you will see very clever opportunistic men find their way into that so that they can manipulate that, so they can have access to women, access to territory, and access to resources. You're just going to call it communism. We got it right now, right? Communism. We've never had communism because it's never really been tried. Yeah, because by the time we get organized, some clever son of a bitch is going to come in for his own self-interest and be the next Joseph Stalin, right? He's going to be the next Mao. He's going to be the next guy. People say, well, communism is always run by men. Yeah, of course it is, because it's run by an opportunistic guy who says, yeah, you guys can all be on the same team. We're all in this together, except for me. Some animals are more equal than others. Go read Animal Farm and you'll see exactly how it plays out in a very simple, easy to understand, story. But I would argue that capitalism and communism, and for lack of a better term, like communitarianism, a merit-based way of organizing society, patriarchy, is a better way to promote the general welfare than is communitarianism that is inspired by a woman's egalitarian notion of, blank slate equalism and social constructionism. In fact, I would argue this. Let me pull that out. I would also argue this, and I'll save this for another episode. But I would argue that the conflicts that we have today are as a result of the merit competency hierarchy way, like men's way of running things, like the patriarchy versus gynocentrism, because we've given women carte blanche when it comes to the social narrative, or the political narrative, and now the economic narrative. And we're going to see where this is going to go. And at some point, it's either going to completely implode and we're going to have like another third world war as a result of that, or it's going to work and we're going to have totalitarianism as a result of that. And that's usually, and then of course we're going to go into that cycle, which everybody's going to talk about, naturally make that association anyways. But I would argue this is that it is not so much capitalism versus communism as it is a male-centric way of organizing society versus a female-centric way of organizing society. Can we expect divorce and feminism to come to third world countries as well as the economic status of countries be a buffer against us? This is the argument that the only reason we have feminism is because we can only have it in affluent countries, and there is something definitely to that. The problem now, in any other age, if we were talking about this prior to like year 2000, I would completely agree. But now that we have the global sexual marketplace, we have the global, community, we're globalizing everything right now. I would say all bets are off in that respect, because Western feminism is exported to third world countries right now. And now you have you've got civil unrest between men and women in India as a result of, in very depressed third world sections of India, that you've got guys who are still held responsible for certain things. The old order way of interacting with women and marrying women and, dowries and all that stuff, all of that versus women's entitlement. That is a new order entitlement that Western feminism and Western gynocentrism has convinced women via the World Wide Web and social media and just this exported Western idea of communitarianism, female-centric, gynocentric communitarianism, and the idea that women have these entitlements and everything else to those third world countries. So it's not going to make so much difference. The belief sets will be altered, not because of economics, but because of an access to an exported feminism. And what did I get here? Silver Bishop says, hey, Rollo, the more people prioritize emotion over reason, the more they see things in black and white only. Cause for nuance, you need to think. Cause for nuance, you need to think. People prioritize emotion over reason, the more they see things in black and white. Yeah, well, they have to. If it's not on, it's off. Because I tell you what, you don't get an emotional high from discerning nuances in any dynamic, in any social or otherwise, right? You get off on Maury Povich saying, the baby's not yours. Yeah. Get her, get her, get her, get her, get him, get him, get him, get him. That's all based on binaries, a binary understanding of the world, because it takes critical thought to sort of filter out and suss out the nuances in any conflict, for sure, but any kind of like social understanding society. And it's boring. I get called boring when I'm on if I'm doing Fresh and Fit with Hotep Jesus. He's the exciting one because he's interrelating with the girls. He's going to get laid. He's going to bang this girl and that girl and whatever, because he's interrelating with them on an emotional level, where I'm here trying to suss out why the hows and whys of the conversation that are going on. And I look like the clinician, right? I look like the guy, let me see, or like Gorillas in the Mist. I'm Diane Fossey or, whatever, or Jane Goodall, like trying to figure out, why does this monkey want to get with this one? Or why does this animal, why does the tsetse fly get with the tsetse fly? That kind of stuff. And I look like a clinician. I look like a scientist, and I'm not cool. I'm not hip. I'm not the guy. I'm trying to figure things out because I'm trying to look at things from a critical analysis instead of being in it, right? That's the difference from analyzing and understanding the game and playing the game. Observing the process changes the process. If I'm sitting there observing it, I can't be cool enough to actually participate in the process. But yeah, it's always, extremes are always going to be more emotionally satisfying than nuance, because it takes critical thinking to figure out why it is you like what you like. Let's see. Oh, I got you. NHS free healthcare is a religion in the UK. Why? Well, look no further than communitarianism. That's how you get that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that it's not a bad idea. I mean, remember, I'm not saying that some of this stuff isn't a good idea. Social Security might be a good idea. National healthcare system might be a good idea. It's just the way that it's implemented is half-assed. I'm not saying that there's not a good communitarianism, the way that women think when it comes to egalitarianism and nurturement and the solidarity, right? The support is like cooperative inter-support amongst women. Like I said, feature, not a bug, but it becomes a bug when it gets scaled up, when it starts to be more about women and not about the greater good. One of the great things about the balance between men's hierarchical competence / dominance hierarchy way of doing things, the counterbalance to that, the complement to that, is women's egalitarian, communitarian way of, nurturing, being more emotional. Like I said before, men and women are better together than we are apart. And I mean that on a personal level, but I also mean that on a societal level as well. The problem we're running into right now is that gynocentrism is the predominant paradigm that we only want to deal with that. We don't want to talk. We want to call patriarchy. It's still around and it's still an old boys club, and we need to smash the we'll see spray paint, smash the patriarchy. Patriarchy hasn't been around since 1965, my friends. Not the horse, sinister, evil patriarchy. The old boys in the back room are making all of these decisions. No, hasn't been around for 60 years at least. So, but we still act as if it is because those old narratives still play. So does that mean that like we shouldn't have like pregnancy leave for ladies? No, we should. Absolutely. That's nurturing. We need that. That's fine. It humanizes us, right? Should we have paternity leave for guys? Yeah, I don't have a problem with that either. I think that's a good idea. It becomes a problem when we change corporate culture and the direction and the impetus and the purpose of that company to accommodate one or the other at the expense of the other. And that's where I think we're going with putting women into the workforce right now. I'm not saying it was necessarily a bad idea. I'm just saying that we still need to have that balance, and it's completely out of whack right now. And Zomboy, what would you say to someone who were to say you're committing the genetic fallacy when talking about the origins of feminism? Great episode. If by genetic fallacy you mean genetic determinism, I would say you need to go read 2 books. The first one you need to read is by Steven Pinker. It's called The Blank Slate: The Modern Denial of Human Nature. And when people talk about, the genetic fallacy, this, or well, what that is it seems to a lot of people that whenever I have to defend like Evo Bio or Evo Psych, they always come back to this. Oh, that sounds very deterministic. Well, human nature is a lot more deterministic than most people want to give it credit for. Whether we talk about IQ or whether we talk about gender differences, whether we talk about what you name it, I don't care what the issue happens to be. You're always going to run into the problem with the genetic fallacy is that it's like, well, we're higher beings than that. We can outthink this. We're more mature. We're more evolved spiritually or emotionally, or we can rise above this, above our evolutionary thing. And the problem is the reason why we even come to that conclusion is because of evolutionary purposes. You wouldn't be able to think about that had it not been for genetic determinism. So, I don't think that it is necessarily again, genetic fallacy, whatever you want to call it. Again, go read The Blank Slate and you will understand what my position is on that. Let's see. And I think that is it for me today. Oh, Donald J. Trump. Well, I got to put him on there. Need a boot camp for all the beta males. Yeah, well, the new book is on the way. I got to you. Who else do I have in there? Did I miss anybody else? Silver Bishop says, hey, Rollo, the people prioritize emotion. Okay, we got to that. Cocoa Puff, I got to you. Chris B, I got to you. Loft 3 Trader says, I think that's okay as long as the man that impregnates 17 women also pays for the child support and the welfare of the women. They might think twice. Let me ask you this. So I hear that a lot. A lot of people say, well, if as long as men would keep their dicks in their pants if they knew they had to pay for those. That's not working for women. That doesn't work for women. Like when I was talking about the DNA thing for the new law in Utah, where it's like, the guy is responsible for half of the prenatal care or whatever it is. When I was looking at that, I was like, so it's a good idea, but the real deterrent is not for men. The deterrent is for women, because will women think twice about trying to cuckold a guy if they know that if the guy contests it, that she's going to get found out. That's a deterrent. So what deters cuckoldry, and what incentivizes responsibility for guys? That is it for me. I am going to grab this last one here that just popped up. What did you say? When our current society collapses either way, it will be interesting to see the mental gymnastics that that makes it our fault. Of course it will. Was it meteorite hits planet Earth, women most affected? And then lastly, I know Mr. I forget who asked me this question. Was it Mr. Jason? Yeah, Sir Mr. Jason asked me. He says, "Well, what's the solution? How do we get out of this? How do we change things?" We go forward with this knowledge. We have to remain educated, and we have to call this shit out when we see it. That's the best thing I can tell you. I don't know where we go with this. I don't know what the solutions are. I hope you guys can tell me what the solutions ought to be. As far as I can tell, the only solution is going to be a meteorite, or it's going to be war, or it's going to be thinking about it. We're going to have to get to the point where the social collapse gets so bad that women become more dependent on men and have to have no other choice but to relinquish authority. Have no other choice but to look. Like, imagine this. Imagine society breaks down so much that we don't have lawyers anymore. We don't have this civil system that ensures women's right to vote. If that breaks down, then we go back to square one. Spin Doctor says, would one of your topics questions was what rights do women have? I think that's a great question. You talk about it. Yes. I meant to talk about that actually. Whenever I see like the Pink Pussy Hat Brigade, whenever I see the women's rights movement take shape in the form of the latest demonstration or whatever, where, like Candace was saying, I put the pink pussy hat on or whatever, they're always, I'll just leave you with this. What they always say is, we're out here for women's rights. My question is this: what rights do women not have? What are you fighting for that you do not have? And there's never an answer for that, because women actually have more rights than men do right now. I don't have the right I do now, but like I did not have the right not to sign up for selective services if I wanted to, in some states, have a driver's license or get a social security card or to open a bank account or to get student loans, because I'm a human male with a penis, and therefore I've got to sign up for that and put my ass on the line. You still have the right to vote all you want, but you don't see women saying, oh, I want complete equity and I want the right to, they're not marching on Washington en masse to get the right to be drafted to be for conscription in the United States. Maybe that means something different in the 21st century. I don't know, but you still haven't seen this. If it was about equality, and it has never been about equality, you would expect to see something like that. That's the easiest one, like the draft. And there are lots of rights and privileges that women enjoy that men will never enjoy. It really is as simple as that. But when women are marching for their rights, you can ask very simple questions. What rights are you? Well, what don't you have? Abortion. Well, you have the right to abortion. Well, we need to protect it. Well, then you're not marching for rights. You're marching to protect something that you think is okay. Now explain to me why you think it's under fire. Why you think that you're at risk of losing all this. Most time it's again, women start from emotion. So it's like they're out there as an emotional reason for whatever it is. Again, like you were saying before, it's not nuance, it's binary extremes. That's what they get off on. They're out there enraged and just grinding their teeth and eradicate men. I should have brought it up. I have a picture from the Great Pussy March of 2017 or whatever it was. And this is this chick with a pink pussy hat, and she's got this placard that says eradicate men. I should put that up. Maybe I'll put it on my Twitter feed after this. The genetic fallacy is a fallacy of irrelevance that is based solely on someone's or something's history, origin, or source rather than its current meaning or context. I'm playing devil's advocate. Yeah. Okay. What that sounds like to me, Zomboy, again, go read the Blank Slate by Steven Pinker. That is what's called the appeal to the noble savage, right? The thing that things were better when we were in a naturalistic state, or the Indians were more peaceful because they lived in this egalitarian collective and they all just got along and loved on each other and sat around in drum circles or something like that. I believe that's what that's about. It's a play on the noble savage, the fallacy of the noble savage. And then let's see. That's it. Okay, guys, I got to go. That's it for today. I look for a new short that I will have coming up on Wednesday of this week. And I will be hosting Rule Zero on Saturday. This coming Saturday, it'll be 11:30 a.m. Eastern time right here on this show. So book 4, The Rational Male Religion, is available. You can go pick it up at the link that is linked in the very first of this description here. Let's see. Sam Bada is diligently working on the Audible, has assured me that it will be ready by the end of May. So look for it at least by then. I want it to be perfect. It is 400 pages, so it is a longer read on this one. So have a look at that. Again, look for shorts. Eat my shorts this week. And another congratulations to the guys in Fresh and Fit for your 100,000. That was great. I'm getting there. Tell your friends. I'm almost at 90 right now. So please subscribe to this. Hit the like button if you would be so kind. It moves me up in the algorithms. And the very best thing you can do if you want to support the show. If you want to support the show, all of the links are in the description. Patreon, PayPal, I take crypto. Whatever else, anything. I thank you for everybody for your super chats. I know I probably didn't get to everybody. If I didn't, email me. I'll try to give you a personal response via email. I am going to be doing a group session. I've decided that the best way to go about doing counseling at this stage is to do group sessions. If you haven't gotten on the email list for the group sessions, if that's what you want to do, I still do one-on-ones, but I would rather, if you can, do those, because then I can get to everybody and we can actually have a real fluid discussion about things. But if you haven't got on the email list, all you have to do is go to therationalmale.com, and that is my blog, and the pop-up will come up where 5 seconds, 10 seconds, it comes up, and then you can key in you can opt in for the email list. I'm going to be doing, probably starting next week, I'll be doing the at least a weekly newsletter. And if you get on that, you will also be on the list for the group counseling Zoom sessions that I'm going to be doing very soon. And then I'll give you the information about that as well. If you're one of my Patreon subscribers, you will get that notice for those as well, because I'm going to offer it to my Patreon people first. So check that out. If you want to be a Patreon subscriber, just go check the description. So there you go. All right, guys. Thanks for a good show, and I will see you later.